across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be your host for 3 thrilling hours of news, views and topical debate all the way to 10 o'clock. Get involved. Get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number, and I promise to play your message out. It is Wednesday, January the 14th. Here is what's coming up. Furious Labour MPs have rounded on the Kylie Minogue of British politics, spinning around Keir Starmer for his 13th major U-turn. Unlucky for some, namely him. Count 'em as once again this rudderless Prime Minister backtracks on yet another major policy. His hated digital ID cards will no longer be compulsory. So, what the hell is the point of them? 0344 499 1000. Dubbing their hapless leader, Keir today, gone tomorrow. Backbenchers accused him of making Labour look stupid. Not hard, of course, but Starmer's succeeding in making matters even worse. How hopeless is this guy? 0344 499 1000. Talking of hopeless, how much longer can that awful little lying Chief Constable Craig Gelford cling on to his job? After Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood told the Commons she has lost confidence in the West Midlands top cop flop over his disastrous handling of the arguably anti-Semitic Maccabi Tel Aviv fan ban, surely he's got to go, and soon. 0344 499 1000. In other news, pressure grows on Starmer to ban the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organisations. America is demanding the British PM takes action, but do you think that, just maybe, he won't? Because he's terrified of losing the Muslim vote here in the UK. What do you reckon? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, the 30-year ordeal of tragic Jamie Bulger's parents continues as his killer, John Venables, is granted another full parole hearing. Why would anyone ever consider releasing this paedophile murderer, piece of scum, from prison? Why not throw away the key? 0344 499 1000. Plus, as desperate Iranian protesters beg Donald Trump to intervene and help them topple the awful Ayatollah's tyrannical dictatorship, word is that America is set to launch military action within 24 hours. More than 6,000 demonstrators have been killed, nearly 20,000 detained, and mass executions were due to start today. Should the United States bomb the hell out of the mad mullahs and their vile regime, and should they do it soon? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, now they're rewriting the scriptures to pretend that the Virgin Mary was an ancient Palestinian. Is nothing sacred? 0344 499 1000. And finally, the laughable list of questions that one po-faced female comic says comedians should ask themselves before telling a joke. Nowhere in Rosie Jones' list is the question, is it funny? I reckon no topic is off limits for humour. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. If you don't find a joke funny, someone else will. I don't care what the subject is. You cannot be sacrosanct when it comes to jokes. That's what I think. What do you think? Are there any subjects or topics off limits when it comes to humour, stand-up, jokes, sitcoms, etc.? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Wednesday night together, and she's back. Really pleased to spend the first 60 sizzling minutes of tonight's Political Asylum in the excellent company of Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Good evening, Isabel.
You are on fine form tonight, Kev. I particularly liked your top cop flop. You're in the wrong job.
Hey,
Headline writing.
you know my background. You know, once you work on the red tops, you can never get it out of your system. Every situation, everything I ever see, I think, what's the headline on that? And then I come up with it.
Love it.
It's like a disease. I sort of wrestle with which story to start with. I would contend that probably the biggest story of the day revolves around that awful little liar, the West Midlands Chief Constable Craig Guilford. We'll get to that in a little while, but we broke this story last night. Well, we broke this story courtesy of the Times, but it broke while we were live on air. I could barely believe it. I was handed a bit of paper and I went, again? You know, they've done this is Keir Starmer's 13th major policy U-turn. He has backtracked on his hated digital IDs and said they will no longer be compulsory. Now, a lot of people, you know, who suspect, probably with some justification, that, you know, Starmer's a bit of a sinister character who may try to bring about this kind of papers, please society that all socialists desire. He may try and do that anyway. But look, this is the truth about why he's backtracked. We know this. We're hearing through sources. It's not that he kind of perceived, quite rightly, that there was a huge protest among British people about nobody wants this. This is like Russia. This is the Soviet Union. This is Korea, you know, North Korea, you know, where police would stop you and say, papers, please. There seems to be some sort of discrepancy. Not British. It's not British. We don't want these cards. But it isn't the protest, the level of objection to this system that stopped him, that made him backtrack, made him climb down. It's this, apparently anyway, but these are very good sources. The Home Office said to him, listen, mate, you know, while you're going around, we're going to bring this in for every single person. No one will be able to work without one. We do not have the infrastructure or the money or the operation to be able to put this in place. We just can't do it. So it's a practicality issue that has put paid to this hated scheme. But it certainly is a huge embarrassment for this Prime Minister. Let's remind us what he said back last year on October the 22nd.
The whole point of digital ID, of course, is that you can't see it. So that should at least deal with the first of her concerns. Look, it is important that we make access to services, public services, as easy as possible for people. And we all know the difficulties that so many people have accessing services. And digital ID has been shown in other countries to help. I do think this is an important step forward. I also think it's very important as part of our plan to tackle those who are entering our country illegally.
Yeah, but the main raft of what he said was you will not be able to work in this country without digital ID. You will not be able to get a job. You know, you and I, Isabel, would have to get ours to retain our jobs. Every worker in the country would have to have one of these digital IDs. Ostensibly, the Starmer, in my view, pretended it was all about cracking down on the illegal job market among asylum seekers and migrants, and I'm sure it would have helped in that respect. But mainly he just likes the idea of this because he's a socialist, and the socialists like the idea of treating all of us like little cogs in the state machine. You know, give us you have to have one of these to exist in this country. That's what socialists do. That's why he wanted it. But he said you can't get a job without one. And now, apparently, you can get a job without one. So he's now saying they won't be mandatory, they won't be compulsory. So what is the point of them?
Well, no point at all if they're voluntary. This only works. I've always said this only works if it's really draconian. I mean, I live in a country with ID cards and they are very, very effective, but they're only effective because this country that I'm in here in the Middle East means business when it imposes something like that. And you can have your view on whether that's ideologically right or it isn't, but it was never going to work in the UK because we simply don't have the system to make it work. And the scale of illegal immigration is so wildly out of control that it was going to be impossible to actually regularise all these people. So it just was never going to work. Added to which, some 3 million people signed a petition saying they weren't going to do it. So you were going to have mass civil disobedience, and the long track record of total incompetence of successive administrations, not just Labour, other administrations, with any kind of IT project on any scale. I mean, we're just incapable of doing this kind of thing. I mean, all of that said, Kev, when someone told me Starmer had U-turned on digital IT cards, I actually thought it was a joke. And I was like, but
I did too.
Only last week they were advertising 80 grand a year posts to run this scheme. You know, and I was just like, no, he can't have U-turned on it already, has he? Yep, he's U-turned on it already.
Exactly right. Credit to you. You said right at the outset that you didn't see this scheme ever coming into play. And don't forget, even now in its reduced form, the government's saying it's not going to come in until 2029. Even if it came in its full form, it would be 2029. There's an election then, and any new government, which won't be Labour, will get rid of them anyway. So this is a kind of almost, you know, a sick comedy farce, really. And Kemi Badenoch turned it into a very funny saga in Prime Minister's Questions today, in which she is performing more and more proficiently, more and more skillfully. And today she had a right old laugh at his expense. Let's recall what happened.
He says no one's going to listen to us. Who's going to listen to him? The winter field allowance, U-turn. Waspy women, U-turn. The two-child benefit cap, U-turn. Grooming gangs inquiry, U-turn. The family farms tax, U-turn. Digital ID, U-turn. Jury trials, U-turn. We hope so. We hope so. I think that's going to be the next one, Mr. Speaker. Week after week, these poor people sitting behind him have to defend the indefensible.
Yeah, so very funny. And Starmer today at Prime Minister's Question Time, as Kemi Badenoch gets stronger by the week, he gets weaker by the week. He was pathetic today, wasn't he?
Absolutely pathetic. And, you know, it's quite hard not to be pathetic when you're
Keir Starmer.
When you're trying to defend the indefensible and you've got no personality, that's really problematic. I mean, if you're trying to defend the indefensible and you're actually really funny and charismatic, like Boris Johnson, you can kind of bluster your way through it, and people may not believe you, they may not particularly respect you, but at least they're a bit entertained. Whereas Keir Starmer is just, you know, this robot trying to defend, you know, the sequencing of the controls on his robot machine being out of order. It's just not in any way engaging or encouraging or any of those things. And I think you're right. I think Kemi Badenoch is getting a lot more confident. I think she's looking much more impressive in Prime Minister's Questions. Is that going to be enough to save her party from political near enough extinction? I don't know, but she is looking in a lot stronger, I think, position than she has done since the very beginning of her leadership.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Keir Starmer is a gift to her. I mean, anybody who has to stand across the dispatch box from that guy, from that hopeless robot, is always going to be on a winning ticket. And she's cashing in on that very well at the moment. Let's be fair, it was very funny today. But Starmer, what a joke. And you know what he's going to do? You talked last week, I think you and I discussed it, about the fact they were advertising 80 grand a year jobs to help run the scheme. Also, every government department last week was told to make serious savings, in order to get together £1.8 billion to launch, especially to launch the digital ID scheme. That would have been the first of the vast amount of money it would have cost to run. So this was last week. This week, clearly he's been told, Keir, this cannot happen. We can't do this. We haven't got the infrastructure. We haven't got the staff. I'm not even sure they've got the technology. He said, so this is also developing into one of Starmer's traits, weird traits. You know, we're going to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. You know, we might go out and defend Greenland if Donald Trump says he's going to go in there. You know, we're going to send my army to Greenland. I'm going to send my army to Ukraine. Keir, you haven't got a bloody army. He's making promises based on empty air, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the key things. There's so many factors that are going to ultimately topple him. But if you're a Labour minister, you know, if you're a ministerial colleague of Keir Starmer, and indeed if you're a backbencher, you're constantly defending things one day that you find out the next are junked. And that is very, very embarrassing if you're an MP. You know, you go out there, you bat for the Prime Minister, you bat for the cause. You know, you may have your discomfort. Let's say it's about, you know, the change to jury trials, but you trying to be a team player, so you toe the party line and you come as best as you can, come up with a defence of the policy, only to find that it's going to be ditched. Now, we haven't got there yet with the jury thing, but I think that Kemi Badenoch was right about that. That is looking very, very shaky, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've got U-turn 14 in the works. I should defer to my excellent colleague Peter Cardwell, who did. I nicked his rather clever handle that he gave Keir Starmer today, which is the Kylie Minogue of politics. He's just always spinning around. And before we leave this particular topic, let's remind ourselves what Mr. Starmer, Sir Keir, said about his beloved digital ID cards back on the 26th of September.
This government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
Wah, 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 wah. That's it, isn't it? What a joke. By the way, what you just heard the Prime Minister say, folks, forget it. You don't need cards to have a job. You won't need them, so they won't be compulsory. So you can imagine everybody getting crushed in the turnstile. So even though they're not compulsory, can I have one? No, no, no. This nation will reject those cards. That's it. Good night, Vienna. Let's move on, and when we come back, let's talk. So we've dealt with the massive loser, Keir Starmer. Next, we're going to deal with the even bigger loser, and I don't say that lightly, Craig Guilford. He is the current Chief Constable of the West Midlands Police. We'll talk about him next.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. I think we can say this now, Isabel, without fear. The West Midlands Chief Constable, Craig Guilford, is a liar. He's been lying throughout this saga of giving wrong, made-up reasons about why he banned Jewish football fans from attending Maccabi Tel Aviv's Europa League tie against Aston Villa last November. He basically banned Jews from Birmingham, saying he couldn't guarantee their safety. Since then, a litany of reasons have emerged. Only last week, at an emergency session of the Home Affairs Committee in Parliament, he suddenly dropped it. Oh, well, what happened was the local Muslim community told me that if I let the Jewish fans in, they would take up arms, there would be a war. So I just decided no. MP's going, you're just telling us that now? Why didn't you tell us that before? What was his answer? Well, nobody asked me. Nobody asked me. I mean, God, this guy is pathetic. He is now currently desperately clinging on to his job, not accepting that he thoroughly deserves to be sacked, which of course he does, and not accepting that he has any reason to resign. He is demanding due process if it is to lead to a dismissal for his atrocious handling of this situation, which frankly sets the police in a kind of anti-Semitic light, that they collaborated and conspired with the Muslim community in Birmingham to keep Jews out of that great city. Well, today something extraordinary happened. You don't see this ever, to be honest with you. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, stood up in Parliament and said she's lost all confidence in him. That is extraordinary. But first, this is the Home Secretary again in Parliament today, talking about the evidence that Craig Guilford has frankly cobbled together, made up, to be honest with you. Here she is. Take it away, Shabs.
The summary provided as evidence to the Safety Advisory Group ahead of their crucial meeting on the 24th of October was inaccurate. The mass tearing down of Palestinian flags, attacks on police officers and on taxi drivers were all either exaggerated or simply untrue.
Yeah, basically, she's accusing there the Chief Constable of a major police force of being a low-down little liar, which is exactly what he is. And then this, as I say, extraordinary moment. This is Shabana Mahmood basically calling time on this guy's career.
The ultimate responsibility for the force's failure to discharge its duties on a matter of such national importance rests with the Chief Constable. And it is for that reason that I must declare today that the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police no longer has my confidence.
As I say, I'm going to say this again. That is extraordinary. You will probably never hear that again. A Home Secretary declaring no confidence in a major police chief, the Chief Constable of a major police force, West Midlands. Incredibly, the problem at the moment, and Shabana Mahmood, to be fair, Isabel, is trying to change this, the Home Secretary has no power to dismiss police chiefs. She should have. Home Secretary should be able to do that, but she can't. That is in the gift of the West Midlands Crime Commissioner, a guy called Simon Foster. We'll talk about him and his statement in just a little while. But your thoughts on basically the Home Secretary rounding on this sad little man, Craig Guilford?
I just really struggle to imagine that if I were in a position of power and, you know, such an important role as that police chief, and then the Home Secretary said they didn't have confidence in me, that I would try to brazen it out. I mean, what level of arrogance is that, to think that you should be able to go on, despite knowing that you presided over an utter shambles, lied about it, and then the Home Secretary has said that she doesn't have confidence. What, you think you can just carry on? You just think you can style it out? I find that quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't, I mean, I don't say this lightly, but But MPs have made it very clear, and I agree with them. This guy has lied. He's lied to Parliament. He's lied throughout this saga. What happened was he was so terrified of the local Muslim community, basically Birmingham's Muslim Islamist extremists, that's who he collaborated with, who just said essentially said we don't want these Jews in this town. That he just did everything that they said. Here he is. You'll like this one. I'm just going to play this for you. This is Craig Guilford back in August, insisting laughably that there's no such thing as two-tier policing. There is only one tier of policing. But he's addressing a particular crowd. Listen to what he says.
Salam alaikum. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the leaders and elders that have afforded me this opportunity to speak to you personally. There is one tier of policing that applies to all of us, and that means that we police without fear or favour. Number 3, we don't tolerate racism and discrimination on behalf of everyone that lives in the West Midlands. Shukran.
I'll leave that hanging there. I mean, how about hello, good evening or good morning first, then move into the Muslim greetings? It's unbelievable, isn't it? And by the way, we don't tolerate racism, but, you know, we love anti-Semitism. That's basically the score, isn't it? It's outrageous, this guy.
Well, I've got a little reply for him and his address there, and it is the word khalas, which means enough is enough in Arabic, basically.
Yeah.
Khalas, we've all had enough of you. Off you go. And by the way, we didn't even talk about the fact that the report that was sent to the committee that made the ultimate decision, the police report, had a bunch of inaccuracies in it because it was cobbled together using AI. Yeah. Unbelievable. Well, 8 inaccuracies.
Well, one of the, you know, we know, first let's just quickly chronicle this saga in terms of Mr. Guilford. It kicked off with him saying, well, you see, the thing is, I had to ban the Jewish fans, the Maccabi fans, because I'd consulted with Dutch police because they played Ajax in Amsterdam several months before, and they are terrible hooligans and they ripped the city to part. Well, that wasn't the case. What happened is the Maccabi fans, let's be fair, they do not have a great reputation, but nor do the fans of many, many football teams, especially British teams. Some of the worst reputations in the world. But Maccabi fans, you know, they're no slouches when it comes to hooliganism. However, when they got to Amsterdam, what happened was there were loads of Muslim people, Islamic people, waiting there, some of them football fans, some of them not, on what they called a Jew hunt. And when the Maccabi fans arrived in Amsterdam, they were set upon, they were leapt upon by these waiting gangs, and trouble ensued. They didn't start it. Anyway, Craig Guilford told Parliament, told anyone who wanted to listen, oh, well, you know, I got this, the Dutch police said, you can't let that lot in. What did the Dutch police say when asked? We told him no such thing. He went on only, I believe, last week to say, yeah, well, I also consulted with my colleagues in the Israeli police force, the Israeli cops, and they told me about Maccabi Tel Aviv fans, and you had to watch out. That contributed to my decision. Israeli police, he never consulted with us at all. He's a liar, isn't he? He's just a liar. I mean, so as I say, due to a system that we need to change with some haste, and will actually naturally change because police commissioners, crime commissioners, thank God, will soon cease to exist. They've always been a waste of space. But at the moment, it is crime commissioners who hire and fire chief constables. The West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner Simon Foster released a statement today. I'm not going to read it all because it's pretty damn long. And he said, I have listened to the Home Secretary's statement in the House of Commons and the questions that followed. I await the Home Affairs Select Committee report. It is my statutory duty to hold the Chief Constable to account for the totality of policing in the West Midlands. In order to give all these issues full and proper consideration, I will be taking this matter to a meeting of my Accountability and Governance Board held in public on Tuesday the 27th of January 2026 and asking questions of the Chief Constable. Well, I think the first question should be, when the hell are you just going to go? Or how do you like this, Mr. Dunlop? Here's a question for you. How do you like being fired? Because you're being sacked now. Now, respect to Mr. Foster that you have to follow the procedure. But this guy, Guildford, he's digging in, not accepting that he should be fired, not accepting that he should, with some dignity, resign, perhaps, and demanding due process. He's pathetic, isn't he?
It's just so dishonourable, and I think that this feeds into public disillusion with people in high places, in taxpayer-funded jobs with massive responsibilities. You know, in any other walk of life in the private sector, if you screw up that badly, no chance are you going to just be able to brazen it out. No chance are you going to be able to just say, well, you know, I'm just going to sit here, and despite the fact that the person at the very top of the food chain, in this case the Home Secretary, in the case of the company, you know, the CEO or the chairman has lost confidence in me, I think I'll just stay, actually. You know, that doesn't happen in the private sector. And this feeds into voter anguish and despair over the state of the country, because they feel that there's just a whole different set of rules for people in those positions who are earning big fat salaries and continue to do so despite being manifestly dishonest and incompetent.
I think this guy, Guildford, is at the epicenter. He's the epitome of everything that is wrong with modern British policing. He's trying to say, oh, we administer the law without fear or favour. No, Mr. Guildford, you administer the law with fear of the Muslim community. You did exactly what the Islamists, what the extremists in Birmingham told you to do, at the expense of the rights of Jewish football fans to attend a football match, to watch their team in the Europa League. That is, I mean, that's stretching human rights, but that is their human right. It is the police's job to protect that right, and Guildford completely abrogated that, and that is a scandal, a disgrace. And ever since then, he's been lying through his teeth about why he banned Jewish fans. We know why he banned Jewish fans, because the Islamic extremists in Birmingham told him to, or else. And that is not acceptable. He has to go. He has dealt a killer blow to the already very low confidence the public have in British policing, and if the police forces generally around this land are interested in even beginning to regain that trust, they should demand that this awful little man goes, and goes now. And on that bombshell, let's go to break, and when we come back, we're not going to talk actually about the actual situation in Iran. We're going to talk about the increasing pressure on Keir Starmer to ban various Iranian organisations, and ask the question, why isn't he doing it? We'll talk about that next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, we're going to deal with the Iranian situation later in the show. I'm going to talk to Greg Swenson, our friend over in America. It does seem as if it's possible that within 24 hours, Donald Trump may order military action on the part of America in order to stem the death toll in Iran, as we're hearing at least 6,000, maybe more, maybe many more people have been killed for protesting against the dreadful Ayatollah's tyrannical regime. We're hearing 20,000 people have been detained, and today we believe executions began. One particular poor 26-year-old shopkeeper we think may have been killed today. So executions have begun. Donald Trump always said, well, if they start killing their people, if they start executing the people, America will act. We'll park that story, but amid this, there is clear pressure on Western leaders to do something about some of the elements of the Ayatollah's regime, this awful regime that has ruined Iran, ruined life for people in Iran since the 1979 revolution. The people are fed up. They're fed up with this dreadful dictatorship. So Trump is leading the charge to say, to tell all European leaders, but particularly Starmer, to A, ban the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, bunch of thugs who do the Ayatollah's bidding, bunch of murdering thugs, and also the international organisation, the Muslim Brotherhood. And yet, amid his strangely muted response to this entire situation, this entire uprising in Iran, Keir Starmer is doing nothing of the sort. So these two dreadful terrorist organisations will not be prescribed, have not been prescribed by our Prime Minister as the terrorist groups they are. Before we discuss the Muslim Brotherhood, people in these countries in the Middle East telling us, why don't you ban them? Why don't you ban them? These are the countries that have banned the Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Syria, Bahrain, Jordan. Seeing a picture build up here. And the one European country that has followed suit is Austria. Why do you think Starmer won't prescribe these organisations? Do you think that just maybe he's worried that if he did that, that might offend British Muslims and he might lose the British Muslim vote? Do you think that might be an element?
Well, I think we were talking about this a couple of days ago, and you know, if those are the kind of votes he wants, then you know you've really got to ask about the kind of people that supports his party. In fairness to Starmer, and much as I don't like to be fair, the Tories didn't ban the Muslim Brotherhood.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, the Tories they conducted a whole review under David Cameron of the Muslim Brotherhood, and at the end of that long and agonising process, you know what they said? They said, we'll just keep an eye on it. How about I mean, look, in all those countries in the Middle East, they know what the Muslim Brotherhood is. It is a dangerous, radical Islamic force that is trying to do bad as far as our values are concerned. And I find it simply extraordinary and embarrassing and shameful that a country like the one I'm sitting in tonight, the United Arab Emirates, no longer wants to support its young Emiratis to go to British universities because they are worried about young Emiratis being radicalised in our universities by the Muslim Brotherhood. And they, like many other Gulf countries, are just bewildered and angry and frustrated and just exasperated that we don't see in the UK what they see very plainly with their much superior understanding of the different types of interpretations and branches of Islam, and they have no difficulty with seeing the Muslim Brotherhood for what it is. And yet our craven government, not just this government, but the Tories before it, are kind of like, oh, well, we better not do that because it might upset a few Muslims. Fine, yes, if it upsets a few of the kind of Muslims that follow the Muslim Brotherhood, that's fine.
And I had an imam last year, towards the end of last year, very senior imam from Australia, who it was a very, very strict Muslim, you know, serious, as you would imagine, of an imam. And he said, I'll get him on again soon, maybe this week, a very incredibly impressive individual. He said, you people are mad. You people are mad. He said, why do you think countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Syria and Bahrain have banned the Muslim Brotherhood? Because they're dangerous. He said, because they're terrorists. And he said, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Syria, Bahrain, Jordan, and now Austria as well. He said, what are they doing? They're protecting their citizens. They're protecting their people. The Muslim Brotherhood are terrorists. And he said, if you people in the West don't want to protect your citizens, then you have no right to complain about terrorism. We are insane in the West. I mean, there is no more powerful statement about the nature of the Muslim Brotherhood that these very strict Muslim countries have banned them.
Yeah, I mean, this is a running sore in diplomatic relations between those Gulf countries, the GCC countries, and the UK. It's serious. You know, whenever you talk to those in power in these countries about what they think of Britain and our Foreign Office and our leadership, they will bring up the Muslim Brotherhood issue. And it also undermines their own efforts if it's seen that, you know, they are banning individuals and groups that then finds sanctuary and a red carpet rolled out for them in the UK. That undermines what they're trying to do to maintain stability in the region. And most of all, it is a threat to our own national security to harbour these types of individuals and radical hate preachers, which at the extreme end, that is what's happening.
Yeah, and call me an idealist, but what I would love to see at this critical moment, literally critical moment in history, if Iran falls, it's a game changer for the entire world, and it is a great day for the West, it's a great day for Israel, it's a great day for all of us. What I would like to see would be a strong Prime Minister in this country saying it is time now for Great Britain to show support for those brave people who are risking their lives on the streets of Tehran and other Iranian citizens to protest against a murderous Ayatollah who's trying to kill them all. We should be showing them support, not showing a lack of backbone and not showing a kind of a cowardice. I think it's really, really depressing that even in these circumstances, Great Britain, and indeed, let's be fair, other Western countries can't show a bit of backbone and can't show support for those courageous protesters risking their lives right now as we speak in Iran.
Absolutely. I mean, the UK supposedly prides itself on showing leadership in international crises such as this. And unfortunately, our government just hasn't been in that position on this one. And, you know, I really am concerned. There's increasing speculation tonight as the US pulls personnel, not all its personnel, but a number of its personnel are being pulled out of Qatar air base amid speculation that there may be strikes imminent, either from Trump or Iran sort of somehow preemptively doing something like that. So that's the hope side of it. Not that we want anybody to be hurt on our side of things, but the downside of things is that I'm really concerned that this is, you know, this help that Trump promised. He said help is coming. It's taking an awful long time. And unfortunately, you know, there are huge numbers of people dying. And I know we're going to talk about that later on in the show, and you've got special guests on that one. But I'm just beginning to get uneasy that this revolution is not actually going to come to fruition, which would be a unbelievable tragedy and wasted opportunity, because it feels like the best chance in generations, doesn't it? And when will such an opportunity come again?
Totally right, Isabel. We're never going to get a better chance. And, I don't wish, death and destruction on anyone. And if America does start bombing, and I hope they damn well do, obviously we fear for potential civilian casualties. But let's put up my cards on the table, probably yours as well. I hope America unleashes all hell on the Ayatollah, his mad mullahs and their god-awful regime. I really do, because the potential is, as you say, we're going to discuss this a little later in the show, but the potential is that without Western help, without some kind of military assistance in terms of bombing and missiles, the mullahs, the Ayatollah, could crush this rebellion in the most ruthless and murderous way imaginable. And when Trump, I sense Trump is gearing towards actually doing something, but when he said 2 days ago, yeah, well, we're going to put some serious sanctions on, and if you do any trade with Iran, we're going to charge you 25% tariffs. It's like, sanctions, that's not what, Iran is kind of used to sanctions. They've had them for 50 years,
Yeah. So, completely. I mean, what the people want is the, massive equivalent of what Trump did to Maduro. Just let's take this guy out, and all the people around him. And, I'd be very interested in any expert analysis on why the delay, because, from a layperson's point of view, it's quite hard to understand why Trump, who said he was locked and loaded several days ago, hasn't actually gone in there.
I have read a couple of stories suggesting that actually, when he said we're locked and loaded and ready to go, his military experts, his military advisors said, well, actually, Donald, we're not locked and loaded and ready to go. We need some preparation time. So hopefully, as I say, I've got to stress, one doesn't ever wish for bombings, but in this circumstance I think we should. Hopefully, there are stories now saying it could happen within 24 hours. I hope it does, because if it doesn't, as you quite rightly say, the chances are this uprising could fail and there will never be a better chance of toppling the Ayatollah than right now. So fingers crossed. Next up, we're going to change course completely. We're going to talk about Jamie Bolger, that poor little guy who was murdered and tortured by two 10-year-olds back in 1993. Well, one of the killers is going to get a parole board hearing yet again, and this puts the parents through agony year after year, and it's got to stop, in my view. We'll talk about that next.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. The greatest hits of the parole board here in Britain over recent years have included the release of Colin Pitchfork, a man who raped and murdered two 15-year-old schoolgirls in the woods while his own baby, was in the back seat of the car. They let him out a couple of years back, and he was found 2 weeks later hanging around outside a girls' school, so he was returned immediately to jail. And then, of course, the parole board let out Gary Glitter, who several weeks later was found trawling through the dark web looking for images of children, sexual abuse images of children. So the parole board has this habit of letting out the wrong people. Let's shed a tear, shall we, for the poor parents of little Jamie Borgia, the poor little 2-year-old who, of course, on February the 12th, 1993, was abducted from a Merseyside shopping centre by then 10-year-old John Venables and Robert Thompson, and taken to nearby waste ground and tortured and murdered. Robert Thompson, to be fair, has never really been heard of again. He served some time in youth prison, was released, and clearly has turned his life around. We've never heard of him again. John Venables, meanwhile, who is now 43, presents more of a problem. This guy was let out, first of all, in 2010 from jail. And then 2017, funnily enough, both times returned to jail because he's turned into a paedophile. He collects child sex abuse images. So he is a paedophile, he is a killer. He has been granted yet another full parole hearing. And what to poor Denise Fergus, Jamie's mum, who's now 57, and they're separated, Jamie's parents, and Ralph Borgia, 59, what they fear is that this parole hearing could unfold pretty much near or even on the anniversary of the day their poor little son was killed. But year after year they have to put up with this, and every single year their lawyers, their people, their representatives point out, they say, listen, this puts particularly Denise, the mother, through this terrible ordeal. She has to remember it all. It brings it all back to her. And then they both have the fear and the uncertainty that maybe the stupid parole board might let John Venables go. So my contention is, stop putting this couple through the hell that you are doing to them, and just chuck the key away. Stop putting this guy on the parole board. He is a paedophile and a child murderer. Why do these poor parents have to be put through this time and time again?
I really don't know. I mean, it's one of those crimes that none of us that were old enough to be conscious of anything much will ever forget. You know, I remember it so powerfully, because the details of it were so beyond horrific, you know, with two 10-year-olds torturing a 2-year-old. It's just unbelievable. And, you know, I feel like I'm constantly talking about this story. You know, every few years this comes up, doesn't it? And not yet another case of should he or shouldn't he ever be let out. And, you know, it's clear that those two boys were given every opportunity to build some kind of new life for themselves, having paid, you know, a decent amount, the right kind of amount of time in jail for people that were prepared to, could be reformed. But it's pathological, it seems, in the case of one of the killers. He just cannot stay away from abuse of children. And what merit is there in letting him out? Because we're only going to go through this again, aren't we?
Yeah, well, how about thinking about the poor parents and stop thinking about the rights of John Venables? Here's another terrible element of what this parole hearing will entail. Denise Fergus and Ralph Bolger, to their credit, have won the right to attend these hearings, so they put themselves through this ordeal because they owe it to their son, and respect to them for that, because boy oh boy do they not enjoy that experience. But this is what may happen for the first time. They will hear the voice of John Venables. He doesn't actually appear. Bizarrely, and this is what really annoys me, is the voice they will hear will be distorted by technology, because after all these years, 43-year-old murdering paedophile has the right to anonymity. Our system still protects this guy. We should see his face, we should hear his voice. If he must get these parole hearings, then we should all know about it. And why we continue to grant a 43-year-old paedophile murderer the right of anonymity is beyond me. What do you think?
I think it's very troubling. You know, imagine if he is let out and he's got a whole new identity and he's living next door to your family. I mean, you know, it's a horrific thought, and nobody would ever know. I mean, there would be a legal ban on any media outlet that discovered the real John Venables and unmasked him would be in contempt of court, and, you know, all hell would break loose. Now, it would be a very interesting test of social media and you know, the parts of the internet that are impossible to regulate, whether they would unmask somebody like that. But it's just, it all feels wrong, doesn't it? The resources that are going into the perpetrator's well-being at this point, into the murderer's well-being, just seem to vastly outweigh the concern for the bereaved parents.
You know, I reluctantly concede, I will concede that if it's two 10-year-old kids, two 10-year-old boys who committed that heinous crime, you know, as 10-year-olds, okay, grant them anonymity, do what you can to try and rehabilitate them in some kind of privacy and secrecy. Fair enough. But because we gave both Thompson and Venables anonymity when they were 10 years old, when they began their sentences in youth prisons, 43-year-old John Venables still has that protection. It's time to stop it. It's time to lift that. You know, we have a right to know what this guy looks like. We have a right to know what he sounds like, to know what he says, to know what he thinks. We have a right to know about this guy. And yet, once again, what does our system do? It is obsessed with the rights of the criminal and not at all interested in the rights of those poor, traumatised parents after all these years. It is a disgrace, if you ask me, Isabel. Isabel, gotta go now, but great to talk to you. Fantastic hour with our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott there. When we come back, we're going over to our friend in America, Greg Swenson. We need to talk about whether or not, as we were just discussing, Donald Trump will come good on his threat to help the protesters, to perhaps launch military action against the Ayatollah. We damn well hope that he does. It's looking like he's edging towards it. Let's see what's going to happen. We'll talk to Greg next. Stay tuned. Here comes the news.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Somebody grokked me this week. I've been grokked. Is that the expression? Anyway, if you tune into Plank of the Week on Friday, you'll see me in a bikini. I'm furious, I'll tell you. It's not a pretty sight. But yeah, it's interesting to see yourself grokked or chat GBT'd or whatever the hell it is. But yeah, we'll have a look at that story maybe another day. Now, more importantly, this is the second hour of tonight's Political Asylum. In a little while, we're going to return to the sordid saga of Craig Guilford, the Chief Constable of the West Midlands Police, the current Chief Constable, I should say, who is under intense pressure to get the hell out of there, get the hell out of his uniform, because he's a disgrace to it. But he's clinging on. We'll talk about that in a little while with an ex-copper who has some very strong words to say about it. Also, we're going to talk about the changing of the scriptures. One university has been teaching that the Virgin Mary was an ancient Palestinian, and there was me thinking she was Jewish. Ah, how could I have been so wrong? Anyway, basically, that's what's going on. We'll talk about that later. We'll take your calls in a little while, 03444991000. But it's time now to return to the big international story of the day, of the week, of the month, really, and that is, of course, Iran and the ongoing threat of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to unleash military action on Iran, on the Ayatollah. In other words, to help the very brave protesters who are rising up and rebelling against a regime that has made their lives hell, at least the older ones, their life hell since 1979. So the question on the table is, will Donald Trump, he kept saying help is on its way, you know, if they start killing their citizens, if they start executing their citizens, there will be, the Ayatollah that is, there will be very serious consequences. What we're looking for is missiles, is bombing, because in my view, and I'm not alone, the Ayatollah's on the edge. His mad mullahs, his awful regime is on the edge. But if it's just left to the protesters, we may miss this opportunity. We'll never have a better chance of getting rid of the Ayatollah and that repressive regime, which is a danger to the entire world. Well, let's go over to the States and talk to our friend from the Republican Overseas Organisation here in London, but he's in God's own country at the moment. Greg Swenson. Welcome, Greg.
Good to see you, Kevin.
Good to see you. Before we talk, let's have a look at Donald Trump's earlier pledge on the situation in Iran.
You said to Iran this morning that help is on the way for protesters. What did you mean by that? What kind of help?
You're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry.
How many
people have been killed in Iran? Nobody's been able to give me an accurate number. I have heard numbers from everything's a lot. One is a lot. But I've heard numbers much lower, and I've heard numbers much higher. We'll be knowing. We're probably going to find out over the next 24 hours. I think it's a lot.
And here he is with a later statement. I think this was earlier today. Donald Trump again.
Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. I'll have it in about 20 minutes. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing.
The instance of U.S. strikes against U.S. assets in the Middle East. What do you say to U.S. service members about why it's worth the risk to intervene in Iran?
Yeah, Iran said that the last time I blew them up with the nuclear capability, which they don't have any longer. So Iran said that the last time. They better behave.
Well, Greg, here's the deal. the president has been saying, now for the best part of a week, if Iran starts killing its own citizens, starts annihilating, slaughtering its own citizens, America will act. It's clearly doing this. We are now told that there may be as many as 6,000 dead. Some estimates are twice that. They are clearly murdering thousands of these protesters. Also, we have 20,000 Iranians have been detained and imprisoned, no doubt currently being tortured. And possibly the straw that breaks the camel's back, as far as Mr. Trump is concerned, is they have clearly begun to execute protesters. Protesters have been called by the mad mullahs enemies of God, and they will face the death penalty. The key player in this is a poor 26-year-old shopkeeper called Irfan Soltani, who was due to be hanged today. The president, when told they're going to start executing, he said he wasn't sure about that, but if that is the case, stand by. Now, we heard today that within 24 hours, America may strike. What I'm really saying, Greg, is I think the world I certainly want America to take military action. I want them to bomb the mad mullahs. I want them to send missiles in. I want America to help the protesters succeed in their mission to topple the world's worst leader, that awful Ayatollah guy and his mad mullah thug killers. I want that to happen. It's looking as if America's very close to doing it. What we've heard so far is that when Trump said we're locked and loaded and ready, that his military advisors said, well, Donald, I'm not sure we are actually locked, loaded and ready, but we'll do our best to get ready. I think perhaps they almost are ready now. Do you think, as is being reported, that within 24 hours America will strike?
It wouldn't surprise me, Kevin. Now, as of yesterday, there had not been a movement of a U.S. carrier fleet, and so a carrier group. So I think you need a carrier group in the region. Maybe that's happened overnight. Maybe they were able to move some pieces around on the chessboard. But yeah, it seems inevitable. And remember, Kevin, as you know from when the U.S. bombed the nuclear capabilities in Iran last summer, they have virtually no air defense. So this could be a surgical strike. I think the U.S., whether it's the Air Force or the Navy, can really just pick and choose what they want to destroy. And hopefully, my guess also is that we have, very accurate information on where the mullahs are. If they were smart, they'd get out of the country and hide out in Paris or Moscow or wherever else they can, have a vacation home. But I think it's inevitable at this point that as you said, Kevin, we want to take advantage of this moment.
Indeed, and encouraging news today. We're hearing that American military bases in the region are being evacuated, which is good news, obviously. To be fair to the president, I mean, he's made it pretty clear where he stands on this. America's the good guys in this. We want America to act. Frankly, I think we should be standing shoulder to shoulder with the States. But as usual with Britain and Europe, all we're doing is offering them verbal support. Thank you very much. I mean, this is time for, I got to say, I don't know what you think about this, Greg, but there was a time when Trump said, "Oh, America doesn't want to be the world's policeman." Yeah. However, I think the world is a safer place when America is policing the world, and I hope they police Iran, and I hope they police the hell out of it very, very quickly. Your thoughts?
And Kevin, you're right. The world is completely dependent on the U.S. We are the sole superpower. Okay, China's doing their best to catch up, but they're not even close yet. And so, we surely can't depend on the European countries to do it. I was quite proud of the UK when they sent fighter pilots from Cyprus, or fighter jets from Cyprus, in along with the U.S. Navy fighters to bomb the Houthis. I don't know can't remember if that was last year or in 2024, but I think that there is a lot of capability for the UK Air Force, or the Royal Air Force, to participate with the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force. But anyway, either way, the U.S. can handle it, and I do think it's a great opportunity to finally get rid of the mullahs.
Yeah, as I think we're both agreeing, I mean, the world, America, we will never have a better chance to get rid of the Ayatollah. But the fear is that without some kind of proactive American action, these uprisings, massive though they are, will be crushed in the most ruthless way. We're already hearing thousands and thousands of poor, courageous Iranians just being murdered in the streets, 20,000 locked up, hangings beginning, mass executions. This is what they will do. And so I think it's sort of incumbent upon the states to do the right thing, don't you?
Yeah, I do, because you hate to be involved in any sort of regime change if we can possibly avoid it. But sometimes it's just inevitable, and it's better for the people of that country. Now, Iran has been a threat, or the mullahs specifically, the Islamic Republic, has been a threat to the Americans and British and anybody in the region. Between their support for Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis, this has gone on for years, and I'm guessing that Iran is responsible for more British and American deaths than any other terrorist group in the world, even more than ISIS. And so, I think it's a defensive, in many ways, it's a defensive strategy to take out the mullahs because of what they've done and what they would do again if they had the capability. Again, I think they've lost a lot of those capabilities. So now they're turning on their own people, which is really sickening. So yeah, I think it's, it would be totally justified to step in as long as it's a surgical strike and we have some sort of game plan on what fills the gap. And that's always the big risk is, who takes control after the real bad guys are out, and then there's always the risk of the less bad guys coming in. We want some, I'd hope a democratically elected government and some decent people can look after Iran. And the Iranian people are fantastic. I can't say enough about, even BBC Persia, great bunch of people. It's really the only conservative wing in the BBC. And so, I hope it works out for them and their families.
Yeah, and lest we forget, I mean, Iran should be a very prosperous country. It's very oil rich, has a lot of minerals. It should be a very prosperous country, and its citizens should be prosperous people. But many of them, millions of them, 90 million people live there, millions of them are dirt poor because all of the wealth of that country has been diverted by the Ayatollah and those crazy mad mullahs towards funding the world's terrorism. They paid for Al Qaeda. They paid for ISIS and so on and so forth. They fund the work. They take Iran's wealth and fund terrorists to attack the West. That's why the people of Iran are both poor and furious because, I think I know some Iranians. The Iranians love the West.
Of course.
So they have a regime that goes against the grain for them. Now you're in the States right now, Greg. Yeah, what's the mood among Americans? Are they feeling the same as you and I do? Because of course Americans are famous, I wasn't going to say notoriously, are famously sort of isolationist. What was Donald's famous phrase, America first, America first. They look after themselves first and worry about other people later, which is fair enough in my view. Donald Trump has kind of changed the dial on that in the last year or so. He's become very internationalist, very active around the globe. What is the feeling among Americans about what Donald Trump may be set to do? Would they are they in favour of America striking militarily Iran?
Kevin, like many issues, it probably falls along political divide right now. I think the Democrats are going to criticize anything that President Trump does. I mean, it's outrageous, but it's true. And so I think there's massive support on the right. You do have a bit of the, sort of the MAGA right that is concerned about any intervention. the Rand Pauls of the world that, just don't think that we should do anything to help anybody. But, America first is not America alone. We're going to look after our interests, which we're doing, because, a powerful group of mullahs is a great risk for American lives and British lives as well. So, there is some self-interest here, but also, look, the great American military is the force for good, a greater force for good. And we're going to use that capability if we can do some good. If it's going to be fruitless, we won't. And so we don't want boots on the ground like we had in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, for countries that have very little capability of developing robust democracies. So we kind of look back on our mistakes and say, okay, let's be smart about this. The Iranians, as you pointed out, Kevin, are a great people. For thousands of years, they've been way ahead of the curve on just about everything. And so, they're quite capable, in my view, just like in Venezuela. So I don't think it's going to be boots on the ground. I don't think there'd be tolerance for that. But I do think, surgical strikes, tactical strikes to take out the mullahs are probably a good idea right now.
And I totally agree. I mean, no one would expect armies to invade, no boots on the ground. But as you say, surgical strikes with missiles and bombs, I think are what we expect. And for those, sort of dyed-in-the-wool American isolationists, they should think about this. If America helps the protesters topple the Ayatollah, this is going to be a great thing, not just for America. It'll be a great thing for the West and a great thing for the world. If you like, England expects America to do the right thing.
Yeah, and we will, and I think again the president has to be cautious. We've had a really good record so far in the president's second term, pretty good record in the first term as well with Soleimani and Baghdadi. He's not afraid to use military strength, but we've had a really good record, with Venezuela, with taking out the Iran nuclear capabilities last summer. Those were like 2 for 2 without any American deaths and very few, enemy casualties as well, which is nice to hear. And the Democrats should love that because they're always on the side of our enemies. And so I think, we have a real opportunity here, but I'd hope that we can go 3 for 3. We don't want to have any mistakes. So if it takes another day or another week to plan and make it, perfectly executed, I know the president will do that. He's going to look after protecting American lives and American soldiers, but also protecting these poor civilians in Iran.
Well, we wish them all the best, and if America does strike, and I think it will fairly soon, we wish America all the best as well. Greg, great to talk to you as always. Thank you so much, mate. That is Greg Swenson, usually here in London. He is chairman of the Republican Overseas Organisation, but he's in God's home country at the moment. I sense that's his Chicago home. Probably pretty cold there. Pretty cold here, I guess. Right, let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to return to the sordid issue of Craig Guilford, the Chief Constable of West Midlands, the current Chief Constable of West Midlands, who, if he had an ounce of integrity and dignity, would step down right now. But he's digging in. He doesn't want to lose his job. He doesn't deserve that job. He's got to go. We'll talk about that with ex-copper Mike Neville next. Stick around.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, earlier in the show, when I was talking to Isabella Oakeshott, of course, we discussed the Craig Guildford affair. This is the current Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, who frankly has been lying through his teeth now for quite a few months, making up reasons why he decided to ban Jewish fans of Tel Aviv, Maccabi Tel Aviv, from their Europa League tie against Aston Villa. Basically, he banned Jewish football fans from Birmingham because he said he couldn't protect them. He didn't feel he could keep them safe because he's consulted with Dutch police who'd had them playing Ajax in Amsterdam not so long before. He said the Dutch police said, "Oh, you can't, very, very dangerous fans. You can't have them." He also said that he consulted with the Israeli police, and they said, "Oh no, you don't want to deal with them." Anyway, the Dutch police said we didn't tell him any such thing. The Israeli police said we didn't hear from him at all. Today, the Home Secretary, in an absolutely extraordinary move, declared that she had no confidence in Craig Guildford. Now, Craig Guildford's final fall from grace, already he was plummeting, let's face it, but last week he appeared before a special emergency session of the Home Affairs Committee at Parliament and went on to tell them a pack of lies and then wrote them a letter saying, "Oh, sorry, I got something wrong." What he got wrong was, as part of his evidence to the Birmingham Safety Committee, I think they were called, Birmingham Council Safety Authority. He said, "Yeah, well, you see, they had this game against West Ham and they were terrible there and we can't have that in Birmingham, blah, blah, blah." Anyway, today he brought that, this was all submitted in evidence to the MPs last week. Today he wrote to the MPs to say, yeah, sorry about that. Actually, there wasn't a game between West Ham and Maccabi Tel Aviv at all. That was all invented by AI. Now, with me is a former Met Police detective, Mike Neville. We need to talk about this guy. I mean, before we do, Mike, let me just put my cards on the table. I think this guy shames the uniform. He is a disgrace to the police force. He is a low-life little liar. And you don't say that lightly about a police chief, but it's true. He's a liar. He's been lying his way through this saga to try and keep on hold of his job, and he still won't go, even after this today. This is extraordinary. This is Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, in the House of Commons today.
The ultimate responsibility for the force's failure to discharge its duties on a matter of such national importance rests with the Chief Constable. And it is for that reason that I must declare today that the Chief Constable of West Midlands Police no longer has my confidence.
Well, before we talk, Mike, also you've got to bear in mind Craig Guildford is a great defender of one-tier policing, won't tolerate racism, doesn't mind anti-Semitism apparently, but here he is talking in August 2024 Look out for the greeting.
Salam alaikum. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the leaders and elders that have afforded me this opportunity to speak to you personally. There is one tier of policing that applies to all of us, and that means that we police without fear or favour. Number 3, we don't tolerate racism and discrimination on behalf of everyone that lives in the West Midlands. Shukran.
I mean, Mike, this guy, I tell you what he does tolerate, anti-Semitism. He is arguably anti-Semitic himself, given that actually the reason for all his decisions in banning Jewish fans from the Tel Aviv match at Aston Villa were dictated by local Muslim extremists who told him that if you let these Jewish fans come to Birmingham, we will take up arms and we will go and have a war. He cravenly conspired with them. He collaborated with them and then told a pack of lies to cover it up and extended his lies all the way into Parliament last week. And today, what do we learn as the Home Secretary? I'm not sure if you've ever seen that before in your long career. No. A Home Secretary saying that she has no confidence in a major police chief of a major police force. That has never happened before as far as I know. And what do we hear about him today? He's dug his heels in. He is demanding due process. He does not agree that he should be sacked or that he should quit. He's a pathetic little man, isn't he?
He is dreadful. And I said the biggest irony for me is the national police chiefs, all the senior officers are given a different portfolio. Like one could be in charge of looking at national burglary or violence against women. Craig Guilford is the national police lead for ethics and professional standards. You can't make it's almost a parody, isn't it? But what's really damning for me is Sir Andy Cook is the Chief Inspector of Constabulary. That means he's the senior police officer who goes and checks on police forces, and he is he's a former Chief Constable, and he looked into this, and his report stated that Guilford's assessments were exaggerated and untrue. They are very strong words, aren't they? And he says that the evidence of this alleged Maccabi Tel Aviv fans was retrofitted to fit the evidence. The two weakest individuals in this, you've got Guilford clinging on because it said that he wants to do one of these things when you retire.
Process,
he wants due process, but also what he wants is apparently the plan was he's going to retire. And when you retire from the police, you can claim a quarter of your pension, and then he'd be reinstated, and then you get.
There's a new system, isn't it? Yeah.
And the other weak character in all this is Simon Foster, who is the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, who has said he's got to wait to the 27th of January. Things may change. I mean, Sir Andy Cook's report is absolutely damning. But what the problem is for the Home Secretary is that the coalition government brought in these police and crime commissioners, and the only person who can sack the Chief Constable is the PCC. So the Home Secretary can say what she wants in effect, however, she can't get rid of him. But you see the claims, you've got the Mayor of the West Midlands saying he doesn't believe he should be in place, you've got local MPs saying it's time to go, you've got the Labour leader of the Birmingham City Council saying it's time for him to go. The only person who's sticking up for him, strange enough, is Ayub Khan,
the MP,
the pro-Gaza MP in Birmingham, who is calling it a witch hunt. That is his supporter. And you would think, wouldn't you, at this point, that he would resign.
If he had any dignity or integrity.
Agreed.
Yeah. And Ayub Khan is the MP for Birmingham Perry Bar, which encompasses Aston Villa, of course. He's the guy that got together a petition with his old mate Jeremy Corbyn, MP for Islington North, nowhere near Birmingham, taking an interest in football hooliganism for the first time in his long and undistinguished career. But, of course, Jeremy Corbyn never misses a chance to make life difficult for Jewish people, does he? Anyway, Ayub Khan, as you quite rightly said, Mike, leapt to Craig Guilford's defence today and said this.
This is truly a sad day for British politics, and despite all the rhetoric we have in this House, Brummies know the truth, that this is nothing but a witch hunt, and the Chief Constable is being thrown under the bus. The Home Secretary knows all too well that West Midlands Police have a reputation for working with all communities.
Well, no, they have a reputation now for working with one community, that's the Muslim community, and frankly Ayub Khan is almost as disgraceful as Craig Guilford. He has conspired in this all the way along. This is, as I say, Craig Guilford, I think, shames the police force.
Absolutely, and I think what this does show is how police chiefs have allowed themselves to be in the grip of certain communities who threaten them. I mean, it's been going on for years, Kevin. Do you know, I remember as a young PC, the licensing inspector, they'd always raid the Irish pubs because the Irish people would sit there and give all the details. They'd never raid a West Indian pub because they'd be bothered, you know, and there'd be trouble. And this has happened throughout. So, and we saw, didn't we, after Southport, there was an attack by a gang of Muslims on a pub. Guy was beaten up very badly, and the West Midlands police sort of sorted it all out, spoke to the community leaders, and everybody went away.
I remember what that police chief said. He didn't call them community leaders, he called them stakeholders.
Yeah, that's a
I never understand what stakeholders mean, but you're right. During those riots after Southport, there was one, you know, most of them were, of course, you know, angry British white people, basically. But there was one riot in West Midlands, around the Birmingham area, which was actually staged by Muslims who were furious about the way that they were being blamed for what happened in Southport, and they were fed up with it. They had a riot, and the police just stayed well away. Some poor guy in a pub got stabbed.
A good beating.
Yeah.
And what you hear from this Craig Guilford, in his mind, I suppose, that he does think there's one tier of policing, but he doesn't see what we all see. And what's happening as well is the people he'll surround himself with, they'll all tell him he's in the right. You know, you have a police force, the West Midlands Police Force has spent 2.8 million on diversity training, and what we end up with is, how do we end up with spending all that money on that, and then we get Jewish people being banned from a football match? And Nick Timothy, the Tory MP, he's described this as the dangers of communalism, and we're getting this more and more in this country, where you've got pressure groups based on a community, whether it's the Muslim community or something else, where they're laying pressure on. You've got these pro-Gaza MPs in Parliament now. Politics is being badly influenced. Policing is being so badly influenced, and when you become a police officer, you take an oath that you'll police without fear or favour, and that is just so straightforward. But what it's become utterly blurred, and we've lost that. And the British police, all this does, and I think this was highlighted by the leader of the Birmingham City Council, saying that it's really damaging to trust and confidence, and that's a Labour politicians saying that. We really need this
all over the country, Mike. This particular story, this particular saga, has dealt a crushing blow to confidence in the police generally. And if Craig Guilford cared about the reputation of the police or public trust in the police, he would step down now. Now, Shabana Mahmood, in fairness, here's the thing. I mean, the one solace we can take is crime commissioners, police and crime commissioners, will soon not be able to dismiss chief constables. It will still not be the only ones able to do that, because they won't exist.
Well, they'll be dismissed.
They're being phased out. They won't exist. Now, Shabana Mahmood, you know, in fairness to her, she couldn't have been more strong today, but it is not within her gift, within her powers. That ridiculously, the Home Secretary cannot sack chief constables, and she says she's going to take steps to change that. The Home Secretary surely from now on must have the power to dismiss rogue police chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely, because as you say, every day that he stays in power, every day that the police are dragged through the mud. So every police officer, every young PC on the beat right now who's trying their best to deal with matters, to deal with violence, to deal with somebody who might stab them or whatever, everybody's been tainted by this man and his actions. And it's just rolling out in the news, it's all over the TV, it's all in the papers, we're discussing it now. And what's happened is Craig Guilford, he needs to look in the mirror and think, what damage am I doing to every single officer? And the hypocrisy of the man, as I say, as this national lead on ethics and professional standards, he will have had officers sacked when he said they'd lied. And now he sits there with all these untruths, having been accused by the most senior police officer in the land, Sir Andy Cook, of making untrue statements, he can sit. How can he sit there? How can he look in the mirror?
Yeah, and the seriousness of the situation is this. You know, I, as a broadcaster, you as a former copper and my guest on national broadcasting, a national broadcasting channel, should never be able to sit there and say the chief constable of a major police force, West Midlands, is a liar. We shouldn't be able to say that. Because he shouldn't be a liar. But the trouble with Mr. Guildford is he is a liar, isn't he?
He's fallen into this trap, though. He's fallen into this trap of trying to please one community over another. And we have the issue where when he was promoted, when he was given that job, some of these people, Muslims are on that board to check. It shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't have religious groups or anybody you feel that you owe a favour to. It should be a straightforward interview with somebody from the police force without having all these different bickering bodies having the stakeholders having a say.
Stakeholders, yeah.
Get rid of them. Let's have just how it used to be, because it's not good enough at the moment.
Folks, give me a call, let me know. This is what I feel, and I think Mike would agree. This guy, Craig Guildford, he has to go by the end of this week, preferably tomorrow, preferably tonight, actually. He has to go. Otherwise, the damage to policing generally in this country will be immense. Do you feel that somehow, some way must be found to persuade this guy to do the decent thing? Or can we just turn around and say, enough is enough, get out of there, get out of the uniform and get out of your office, this is a joke? What do you think? 03444 499 1000. Big thanks to Mike Neville, as always. Thanks for coming in, Mike. Next up, we're going to talk about the Bible, the scriptures. At least one university has been teaching that the Virgin Mary is an ancient, or was an ancient Palestinian. I thought she was Jewish, but apparently not. She's Palestinian. So they're sort of visiting the Gaza dispute onto the Bible. Unbelievable. We'll talk about that next. Stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Got some breaking news. The British Embassy in Tehran has been temporarily closed and now will operate remotely, as in from London or elsewhere. The government spokesperson said, "We have temporarily closed the British Embassy in Tehran. This will now operate remotely. Foreign Office travel advice has now been updated to reflect this consular change." Perhaps that goes hand in hand with America evacuating its military bases in the region. Perhaps, I kind of hope this actually, that the British authorities have been told, get your people the hell out of there because bombs are coming. As I said, we don't celebrate bombing. People will die, innocent people will die, but if the upshot, the result is that the Ayatollah and his god-awful regime are toppled, then it should happen. I hope it happens. So yes, the British Embassy in Tehran has been temporarily closed amid growing speculation that America is due to strike militarily very, very soon, possibly within 24 hours. Now, let's move on to my next story. Unusual story, but it's caught my eye. I don't know why, it just did. This is the story of the Open University. After complaints from Jewish lawyers, the UK Lawyers for Israel organisation, the Open University has agreed to stop calling the Virgin Mary an ancient Palestinian. I thought she was Jewish. I don't know. Now, the suspicion here is that they're letting kind of modern sensibilities invade, the teaching of the scriptures, of, the story of Jesus and his mum and all that. The Virgin, to say it's a contested claim is a bit strong. I mean, there's no evidence that she was an ancient Palestinian at all. And of course, the Jewish lawyers are saying, well, this is typical, isn't it? Just trying to sort of take the Jewish story away. And they say that this will give a misleading impression and could create a hostile environment for Jewish students. Let's talk to Christian. Writer, broadcaster and presenter Emma Trimble. Hi Emma. Yeah, unusual story. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's definitely not contested. Mary was definitely not an ancient Palestinian. It's a complete anachronism, and actually once upon a time, not so long ago, it would have been regarded as extremely bad scholarship to take a modern term and impose it on a previous historical period. Mary was, in all likelihood, born in the province of Judea. Well, not in the province of Judea. Actually, she would have been born in the Kingdom of Judea, which until just after Jesus's birth was a client kingdom of the Roman Empire, and then became a Roman province. And of course, everyone will know Pontius Pilate from the story of the crucifixion. Pontius Pilate was the governor of Judea under the Emperor Tiberius. So it was very clearly at that point a Jewish province of the Roman Empire within Mary's life, within Jesus's life. And actually, the term Syria Palestina wasn't used until the 2nd century after Christ's death, and it was used after a Jewish revolt. The Jews were revolting against the Roman Empire, very briefly managed to win and establish a Jewish state, and the term Syria Palestina was actually used in a punitive way, actually to sever the relationship between Jews and their land. So even though the term Palestinian or Palestine does have ancient etymological roots, the idea that area wasn't Jewish, the sort of imposition of the modern Arab understanding of what a Palestinian is onto that period of history is completely absurd, and it's reminiscent of those who have tried to claim that the people who built Stonehenge were black.
That was a funny one as well. The Open University has agreed, under pressure from Jewish lawyers here in Britain, they have agreed not to use it. They've said, we will not use the term again in future learning materials. They acknowledge that the description of the Virgin Mary as ancient Palestinian is or was problematic in a way that perhaps it was not when the materials were written in 2018. Well, that is fair enough because it was before October the 7th, it was before the Gaza dispute. It doesn't detract from the fact that even in 2018, it was flat out wrong.
But Kevin, I think even in 2018, it's very difficult for them to deny that there could have been some kind of political motivation around this, that they weren't trying to in some way sever the relationship between the Jewish people and that land. Because even going back to when I was at university, the pro-Palestine cause in British universities is always, as things are in universities, years and years ahead of what ends up in the mainstream public cultural discourse. So there is simply no excuse for it, and it's you can't even argue that it's a neutral term. I know they've talked about using terms like Canaan, which does is a fair description of part of that region at a particular period of time. But it is a complete anachronism. And as I say, the term Syria-Palestina was used by the Romans in order to sever that connection between Jews and their land. So actually, it's in a way, it's history repeating itself. And even under the Ottoman Empire, under successive Muslim empires from the Muslim invasion, and obviously a lot of the people who are now living in that area are Muslim Arabs. And actually, even the original Philistines, going back to the 12th century before Christ, even they were immigrants to that place, to the land of Canaan. But the thing is that, yes, the term Palestine really comes into modern use with Mandate Palestine in the 20th century, but there wasn't even an independent Palestine under the Ottoman Empire. It was just a territory of another empire and other empires before that. So it really is, in the most profound sense, a total anachronism to suggest that the Virgin Mary, or in fact Jesus, as many do, was a Palestinian.
Yeah, Caroline Turner from the UK Lawyers for Israel told the Telegraph, we welcome the Open University's decision to stop using the term ancient Palestine in its future teaching materials. Historical accuracy matters, it certainly does, particularly in a highly sensitive and politicised context where terminology is often misused to erase Jewish history and identity. Universities have a responsibility to ensure that their teaching is rigorous, neutral and inclusive, and that it does not create a hostile environment for Jewish or Israeli citizens. So I suppose what caught my eye about this story is this sort of, you know, anti-Jewish rhetoric, anti-Jewish narrative seeps in everywhere, doesn't it? To the extent that they're trying to change the story of Jesus, really, here, aren't they?
Well, it's completely misleading. If you were a student and you were trying to study this area, this would completely confuse your understanding of the historical facts. And so you have to ask, why are they doing it? And it's obviously because they don't think that the Jewish people have a right to that land. It is very obviously politicized. And whilst there, you know, people can criticize Israeli policy, etc., many people simply have a problem with the existence of Israel because they have a problem with the Jewish people having a homeland. And I think that is what this often boils down to. And I don't think that there is any way for them to excuse this. You know, I'm not saying that they've done this because they're intending to be anti-Semitic, but the upshot of it is that they are kowtowing to perhaps some perceived sensitivities on the part of those who might have a particular political view about Israel's existence. And in that, they you know, are in some sense pandering also to anti-Semites who don't think
exactly
have a right to exist in their land that they have been in for thousands of years. I mean,
this effectively adds up, in my mind, to the writing out of the story of Jesus, the Jewish element. I mean, am I right? You know, godless person that I am, Emma. I mean, wasn't Mary Jewish? Is that basically the story? Yeah.
It's not as if that's contested, is it?
Well, it is here. She wasn't Jewish, according to the Open University, at least previously, according to the university. She was ancient Palestinian. She was Jewish. So was Jesus, right?
Well, I mean, if somebody were to claim that she was ancient Palestinian, I don't think this is what they mean by this. Ancient Palestinian in the way that some modern Palestinians are. Some are some are, you know, Palestinian Arabs are Christians. Most of them, by a long shot, are Muslims. And of course, there were no Muslims in existence at that point. So can't possibly be contested, can it? Nobody can suggest that Mary was a Muslim, although some Muslims would.
They probably will before too long. By the way, I think I might have told you this. I want some brownie points for you. I went to midnight mass on Christmas Eve. How's that?
All the brownie points, Kevin.
You see, there's hope for my dark soul yet. You never know. I thought I found, I'm not a believer, but I found it very moving, the simple faith of the people there. It was a church in Hampstead, packed out. It was a great way to see in Christmas. It really was.
I'll get you to church with me yet, Kevin.
Yeah, one day. It's a date. Good to talk to you, Emma, as always. Emma Trimble there, writer, broadcaster and presenter. When we come back, time to take a few calls from you, 0344499 1000. And after the 9 o'clock news, we're going to talk about jokes and what topics are acceptable to tell jokes about. Apparently, according to at least one comedian, there are all these topics that you must not even broach in the field of humour or stand-up or sitcoms or comedy. I don't agree with that, but we'll talk about that after the news. But next, your calls, 0344499 1000. Stay where you are.
This journey of me following migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning all around the clock to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Get your calls in, please. Let me know what you think about, should Donald Trump strike Iran? Do you hope, like me, that he moves in maybe within 24 hours, fast as possible, to get rid of that awful old geezer, the Ayatollah? Awful old tyrant that he is, murderous dictator. What do you think about Craig Guilford, the Chief Constable of West Midlands? He's a disgrace, isn't he? He's a liar. He's got to go. What do you think about him clinging on to his job? The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, saying she's got no confidence in him. That is extraordinary. That's never happened before, as far as I know. He should be fired. He should go. Let me know what you think. And what about poor Jamie Bulger's parents? Why do they have to keep going through this parole ordeal for that piece of scum, John Venables, who murdered their son, their poor little 2-year-old boy, when he was 10, and he's been in and out of jail ever since. He's a paedophile as well. Why do Mr. and Mrs. Bulger, or Denise Ferguson, I think her name is, and Ralph Bulger have to keep going through this? What about their rights? Never mind the rights of John Venables. And why the hell does John Venables still have a right to anonymity? Fair enough when he was 10, but 43? What's going on? 0344499 1000. Let's go over to Grace in Ealing. Hello, Grace. I spotted your call earlier. And you confirmed, I mean, I'm a godless soul, I don't know much about the scriptures, but when I read that the Open University was teaching that the Virgin Mary, Jesus' mum, was an ancient Palestinian, I always thought that she was Jewish. Am I right?
She was definitely Jewish. I mean, I think that people outside of Christianity might presume that the Bible's just a kind of religious myth book, but it is actually a compilation of texts that were written thousands of years ago, and it's, you know, obviously a massive topic. I came to conclude, as mad as it sounds, that the events of Jesus' resurrection did actually happen, but the point is that, you know, throughout the Bible, we hear about the Jewish people, and Jesus is a Jewish person. We're not being told about Palestine. He is also mentioned in other texts, which are not in the Bible, and he's not Palestinian. And I think it speaks
He's Palestinian. Sorry.
I think it speaks to this instinct that quite a lot of people have, that they kind of want to claim Jesus for their tribe, for their political or ideological tribe. People, even who aren't Christian, they think that Jesus was a nice guy, so they want to say, well, he was on our side in this big political debate.
Well, he was a nice guy, wasn't he? He's had a lot of good press over the years.
Absolutely. But they're kind of missing the point, because he didn't come to be on the part of one political side or another. He didn't come to say, I like this group and not this group, or I am of this ethnicity and not the other ethnicity. He overruled that. The people who he was talking to felt very strongly about kind of allegiance to their tribal group, in the way that people now might do about being part of the Palestinian cause or another political cause. And Jesus was kind of saying, that's not the main point. The main point is that each person is welcomed, and each person needs to repent and turn to God. And being high and mighty by saying I'm fighting against genocide is actually not the main point of Christianity, although we should be very concerned about the suffering in Palestine. That's actually not, you know, it's not just about social justice. Christianity includes social justice, but that's not all it is. And I think that some people forget that when they try to say Jesus was a Palestinian.
He wasn't. He was Jewish, and so was his mum. Let me ask you this. I mean, I'm digressing a little bit, but I'm kind of fascinated. Do you genuinely believe in the resurrection? Do you believe Jesus died and then came back from the dead?
Yeah, I find it really hard. Do you genuinely
believe that actually happened?
It's very hard for me to kind of wrap my mind around, or like process things that I've not seen and witnessed myself. In the same way that it's hard for me to believe things.
You're not that old, are you, Grace?
But I mean, I having looked in quite a lot of detail at the historical accounts, and one book I found very interesting called Who Moved the Stone looked in quite a lot of detail at the people who'd written the gospel accounts, and I came to conclude that it must have happened, but I do know that sounds bizarre. I'm not instinctively...
No, I'm fascinated. I was just saying to Emma Trimble that, you know, I'm not a believer, but I went to midnight mass on Christmas Eve, and I was very moved by the simple faith of the people there. And I guess that's why I'm asking you, do you actually believe that? Because it's a question of faith, isn't it? Listen, Grace, fascinating to talk to you as always. I've got to go, though, because it's nearly the adverts and the news. Grace there in Ealing. It is the news next. Stick around, folks.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're going to talk about jokes and humour in just a second. The point on the table is, or the question I'd like to ask you, we're going to discuss this in just a second with a comedian. Are there, in your view, any areas, any topics, any subjects that should always remain off limits when it comes to jokes, stand-up, sitcoms, comedy generally? Any topics you shouldn't make jokes about? The reason I ask, and we'll talk about this in a second, is that a comedian called Rosie Jones says that people like Ricky Gervais and Jimmy Carr shouldn't, for example, make jokes about trans people or the trans issues because they've got no lived experience of trans. Generally speaking, though, are there taboo areas that you shouldn't make jokes about? I say no. And I say that if Jimmy Carr tells a joke that offends you, it might make me laugh, or the other way around. That's the way it goes. But he should not be banned from telling that joke. We'll talk about that in just a second. Let me know what you think. Any topics that should be off limit for jokes, for comedy. 03444991000. Meanwhile, your thoughts on, in terms of, we're going to start taking calls fairly soon, in terms of Keir Starmer's 13th U-turn on digital ID. He said they won't be compulsory anymore if you want to get a job. Do you trust him? Do you think that's the end of digital IDs? Because if they're not compulsory, 3 million people signed a petition saying they didn't want them, so I don't suppose anyone will take them. Do you trust him? What do you think about digital IDs? Do you think they are an imposition on our liberty? Because I do. 03444991000. I think the big story of the day, I want to get your thoughts on it. Craig Guilford, the Chief Constable, the current Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, has lied and lied and lied. He lied to Parliament. He's lied through his teeth throughout the saga, giving false reasons why he banned Jewish football fans from Maccabi Tel Aviv's away match at Aston Villa back in November, not actually admitting that basically did what the local Muslim extremists told him. 03444991000. The Home Secretary says she has no confidence in this guy. He's got to go. Shouldn't he go soon? Shouldn't he go tonight? Shouldn't he go tomorrow? What do you think of a man who's lied through his teeth, admitted it, and is clinging on to his job? What confidence can we have in the police if this kind of thing is going to be allowed to happen? 03444991000. And Jamie Bulger's parents, why are they constantly put through this ordeal of having to go to parole hearings as the parole board sits in judgment, potentially to release John Venables, who killed their poor little boy, 2-year-old Jamie, back in 1993 when he was 10. He's been in and out of jail ever since. He's a paedophile. He's been done for collecting vile child sex images. Why are we even considering letting him out? And why do those poor parents have to go through that ordeal? And finally, a good topic, I think, to talk about. Do you think Donald Trump should bomb or fire missiles at the Ayatollah and the Mad Mullah to try to help the protesters in Iran topple that vile regime? I think they should. I hope they do, and I hope they do fast. Maybe you don't agree with that. What are your thoughts about what Donald Trump should do about Iran? Should he strike soon? If not, why not? 03444991000. Get on the blower. Let me know what you think about any or all of those issues. Now, let's talk about comedy. There is a comedian, a female comedian called Rosie Jones. She suffers from ataxic cerebral palsy. So she's a brave girl. She does stand up. Credit to her for that, respect. But she has issued sort of instructions, if you like, about what people are allowed to make jokes about. She made a list of things that you shouldn't make jokes about, or questions. She made a list of questions that comedians, like, shall we say, Ricky Gervais, she cited Ricky Gervais and Jimmy Carr. She said questions they should ask themselves before they tell a joke. Among that list was not the question, no sign of the question, is it funny? So basically she called Ricky Gervais and Jimmy Carr privileged cis white straight men who shouldn't be commenting on trans issues because they don't have any lived experience of that. Is that the case? You can't make any jokes if you don't know about it, if you don't have lived experience of them. Is that the case? Personally, I don't think so. I think you should be able to make a joke about anything. I think this is a really interesting topic. 03444991000. Let's find out what a real-life comedian thinks. Paul Cox. Welcome, Paul.
Hello, Kevin. How you doing? Good evening.
Good to see you, mate. Where do you stand on this? Rosie Jones, very brave lady. Look, let's be fair. She suffers from ataxic cerebral palsy and puts herself on the line night after night doing stand-up. Good for her. Respect. But she seems to take a very po-faced view of comedy and humour. And she said that Ricky Gervais and Jimmy Carr, for example, she said this in an interview for Attitude magazine, saying that they are privileged cis white straight men, and they shouldn't be making jokes about, for example, trans issues, because they're not trans, they don't have any lived experience. She says it's just your privileged cis white straight men who open their newspaper and go, oh, people are talking about trans people. I could know a bit about that without experiencing it at all. To those boys, I'd say, with respect, shut the F up. She's entitled to her view. Now, my view on comedy is there should be no subjects in the world that you cannot make a joke about. Now, you might make a really tasteless joke about something horrendous. Now, I might be very offended by that. Unlikely, actually, but I might be. And somebody else might find it hilariously funny. Do you see what I mean? So,
Absolutely.
You know, all jokes are all things to all men. What's your view? Are there any areas that you should not ever tell jokes about?
No, there are no areas you should never tell jokes about, Kevin. That's the whole point of comedy. Comedy is exciting. That's how it's meant to be. Comedy's become so accessible in the last 10 to 20 years via social media that all of a sudden everyone thinks they own it and it should look a certain way. When I first went to comedy, perhaps even when you first went to a comedy club, Kevin, you went to a club, it was in a basement somewhere, it was exciting, there was somebody there inevitably telling jokes about things that were a little bit on the edge or that you could relate to, or about something that you perhaps wouldn't say or have said to someone in confidence. Look, Rosie Jones and I actually started comedy almost exactly the same time. I remember seeing her on the open mic circuit in London, and you're right to say that it's brave of her to do so. I hate to use the word brave, actually, but it's great for her to do so because it's a communication sport, comedy, and it's difficult for someone with cerebral palsy to communicate. Where her and I divert is when I don't believe we should be telling anybody what to say at any point.
Agreed.
And Rosie seems to be comfortable in doing this. At the same time, she's saying that Ricky Gervais and Jimmy Carr can't talk about someone or something that they've no lived experience of. She's telling cis white men, whatever on earth that is, Kevin, that they can't or can do something. So there's hypocrisy immediately. There is only ever one true judge of comedy, and that's the audience. Now, if we look at this purely as an economic situation, on face value, Rosie Jones, Jimmy Carr, Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais has just won a Golden Globe for the very comedy special that Rosie Jones is criticising him for. There is a massive audience for Ricky Gervais. There is a massive audience for Ricky Gervais. And Ricky's exceptionally clever, by the way. These aren't just route one jokes. These are jokes that he has considered and he has analysed, and he is very comfortable. Do not cross a line that he sets himself. Now, we all know that comedy is tragedy plus time, and it's very difficult, particularly...
I like that.
But for someone like me who, you know, I talk about this sort of stuff quite a lot, and on X maybe, if a big event happens, immediately sometimes I want to make a joke about it. But I will hold back because I've learnt very quickly that it loses its value particularly if people have died or if there's been a tragic incident. No matter how funny that joke could be, there just hasn't been enough time. But the idea that you couldn't joke about a subject, for me, is ridiculous. Comedy needs to be preserved. It's the only way, particularly in the environment we now exist, where you can actually hear the truth. In some of Ricky Gervais's previous stand-up specials, he's talked about trans issue from the perspective of a man, which is what nearly all trans women are, men. He's talked about the immigration issue from the perspective of somebody stood on Dover Beach trying to help women and children out of a dinghy. Turns out there aren't any. And these are all true things, and that's what Kevin, that's what makes us laugh, though, isn't it?
That is making me laugh. I mean, do you remember a couple of years back, Paul, that Jimmy Carr, I mean, perhaps testing the limits of exactly what we're discussing in one of his stand-up routines to a big audience, big theatre audience, made a joke about the Holocaust. Do you remember that? And there was one hell of a row. And respect to Jimmy Carr, he turned around and said, I don't care. He said, I thought it was funny. The audience laughed. And for him, he said, the only criterion is this. Is the joke funny? Never mind the topic. Is it funny? If it's funny, then it's valid comedy.
And I totally agree. And whether you and I appreciate that joke or not, it is inconsequential.
I'll be honest with you, Paul. I'm not going to repeat the joke.
No, don't repeat the joke.
I'm not going to repeat the joke, but you know the joke I'm talking about.
I do.
I'm not proud of myself, but it did make me laugh.
Well, of course it did. But that's the point, isn't it? The whole point is, irrespective of what society has told you, you should and shouldn't like or shouldn't find funny, you did. It's a natural response. That's why the audience is the best judge, because it's involuntary, that response. You didn't think, oh, I hope he says something bad about the Jews. That's not what the joke is, by the way. If you start looking at it through the perspective of this whole sort of woke paradigm or multiculturalism, or be kind to everybody. By the way, everyone who says they're being kind is never being kind. Rosie's not being kind in that article. She's saying there is a certain type of comedy and these are the rules for which you follow. I don't know anybody who wants, imagine that on the front of a comedy club. Inside here is rules-abiding comedy. You will feel
the rules of comedy.
But it just doesn't make sense. By the way, I'm not obtuse here. Rosie Jones has an audience. Of course she has an audience. And good for her. And there will be many people that don't think like me, that think that what she's saying is perfectly acceptable. And power to them. But it's not for me. And by the way, it's not for the vast majority of people either who see comedy as an escape from all that nonsense.
Yeah, as I said, I keep saying, Rosie Jones is a very brave young lady. She's got ataxic cerebral palsy, and she goes out and puts herself on the line night after night to a live audience. You know about that. Nothing more terrifying than standing. I mean, I haven't done it for comedy, but I've performed before live audiences quite a few times, and it's a fairly terrifying experience. And I can imagine if your mission is to make that audience laugh, that's even more terrifying. I mean, the sort of stuff I do, you can chuck in a joke now and again and get a laugh, but that's not my main. I'm doing politics discussions, things like that. Not particularly serious, but that's one thing. Having to make an audience laugh must be terrifying. Have you ever sort of stood up there and hopelessly failed in that endeavour? Found an audience that just didn't find you funny, you started making jokes. Have you ever had that, the sort of kind of the tumbleweed experience? Tell us about it.
I absolutely. Look, I've been doing comedy now for 12 years. I started on a London open mic circuit. I did something called, I'll give them a shout out actually. I did the Comedy School, which is in Camden. And you can go along and do a 6-week course in stand-up comedy, and all the money goes towards charity, right? Yeah. So I want to champion those. But following that really warm experience where I went to the Backyard Club back in 2014 and stood in front of 100 people and did the first 5 minutes of comedy I'd ever written, and they all applauded me and said I was great. I went straight from, because, everybody was very accepting of what we were doing and how new we were. I went straight from that to something called the Lion's Den in Shaftesbury Avenue. No longer exists.
Yeah. But it really was the
comedy
Lion's
club.
Den, right?
But it was called that for a reason. And I paid £5.
£5
Go on. To go on stage and tell 5 minutes of jokes to absolute silence. The previous night I'd said the previous night I'd done it at the showcase, thinking it's only a matter of time before I get my own TV show, Kevin. So I strolled into this open mic comedy club and died essentially. And
what's that like? What's that like, Paul? That must be desperate.
Okay, so it can
lonely, right? Lonely.
But, well, it can be, and it is. I'm not denying that it's not, but it's a rite of passage. You have to do it. It's like any career. You need the rough and tumble.
Yeah.
You need the cuts and bruises to get on. You know, you didn't become a broadcaster overnight. You have to go through some bad interviews or some bad times in front of an audience or whatever it is.
Me more than most, I'll tell you.
Well, I would like to say, Kevin, I think you're fantastic. But what I would say is I enjoyed the process. So that happened, and I felt for the first time, this is what I want to do with my life. This is exactly what I want to do because I enjoyed it. And that audience, whether they were right or wrong or not, an open mic audience is usually made up of people who just happen to have walked past or were in the, rumba class an hour before and didn't want to leave. It can be, or you've been dragged along by a friend. But I also am a host of my own comedy club, so I MC. If you've ever been to a comedy club, you'll know.
Yeah, I've been lots. Yeah, I'm so old. I was there in the originals, in the alternative comedians back in the day. I saw sort of Rick Mail, Adrian Edmondson, Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders with an audience of about 12 before they made it big. So I remember those days. So conversely, Paul. When you've got an audience in the palm of your hand and they're laughing at everything you say, is that an extraordinary exhilaration?
Yes. Both can become out-of-body experiences, actually, particularly when you're failing. It feels like you can watch yourself doing it. I think I'm glad I'm not him, and then you suddenly realise you are him. but conversely, when you're on stage and it's just going well, and anything you say is really got them going, it just feels incredibly natural. There's no hesitation in your mind. You know what you're going to say next, or if you don't know what you're going to say next, it's presented to you in your mind in a matter of nanoseconds, and it's a wonderful feeling. And you go along with that, and you're never thinking really, what is it I should and shouldn't say.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you one thing, Paul, that strikes me. I'm not talking about Rosie necessarily. I've never seen her act, so I'm not qualified to comment. But I see a lot of these young people. It seems to be it's a new thing that young people in their 20s and that say, I'm a comedian, I'm a stand-up. And you see their act, you see them, and you think, you haven't got a funny bone in your body. And there's a certain type of person. You have to be, don't you, a certain type of person to be funny. You have to be a genuinely funny kind of person, because so many of these young comedians, I don't think they've asked themselves this question, am I funny? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and I think that's because there's a whole generation of people that aren't doing it to be... It's the first thing that surprised me when I started doing it. I'm now in my... I'm 46. I was in my early 30s when I started comedy.
No, 46?
I'm 46, Kevin. Yeah. Unbelievable, I know.
But enough of your waistline. Carry on.
So, yeah.
See, I could do this. I could do this. I could do this stand-up stuff, you know.
I'm not offended either. It's very funny. But I was surrounded by a lot of young people who I suddenly realised weren't doing comedy because A, they thought they were funny, or B, they wanted to be funny. It was a conduit to something else.
This lecturing.
They wanted attention. They wanted, and you know, I'm a comedian. I want attention too, but I want it to make people laugh. That gives me something, and it gives the audience something.
Yeah.
I've often met lots of comedians who want to send a message to the world, and you're like, what do you want to send a message to the world for?
Yeah.
We got Keir Starmer for that, and look what he's doing to the country.
So the headline on this, Paul, great talking to you, is there should be no rules about comedy, and you can make a joke about anything. And by the way, you know, you said about, you know, it would be a bit ridiculous to make jokes about a tragedy that happened yesterday. If a terrible tragedy happened today, 50 people died in a train crash or something, nobody would make a joke. In a week's time, they start coming out, don't they? Black humour.
Absolutely.
Always happens. Always happens.
And this is it, isn't it? It's pathos. It's how we deal with life.
Tragedy
life
plus time, what you said, yeah?
Tragedy plus time, Kevin, absolutely.
Paul, fantastic to talk to you. Come on again soon. Paul Cox, Fascinating, fascinating. So, can you make jokes about anything? Do you think there are any topics off limits for comedy, for stand-up, for comedians? Let me know. 03444991000. When we come back, I'll be reading some of your messages. I don't know if we've got any WhatsApp voice notes, but if we have, I'll play them out. But most importantly, I'll be talking to you people. We've got lots of calls lined up. Let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk. That next. Stick around.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, an Englishman and an Irishman and a Scotsman walk into a pub. No, I'm not going to tell any jokes. Anyway, you're not allowed to tell those jokes anymore. You see, there you go. Apparently, those Englishmen, Irishmen and Scotsmen walk into a pub. Well, that has been deemed as racist. So don't you dare tell those jokes anymore, or do tell them. What the hell? Lots of calls about this, actually. What can you tell jokes about and what can you not tell jokes about, if anything? Well, let's first of all talk to Dave in Manchester. And you are a comedian, Dave, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so what's your in your expert view then? What's your feeling? Are there any topics or subjects that should remain strictly off limits for comedy?
No. I mean, if it's funny, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. That's my view. I think anything, if the only thing you should think about in terms of a joke or a line in a sitcom or whatever, is it funny? It should be your only question. Now, you might in your act tell a joke that some people like fall around laughing, split their sides over. Other people might find it very offensive. Well, that's their hard luck, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've offended. I remember Billy Connolly actually said, if you don't offend one person at least, then you're probably
not funny. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's probably true.
He also said it's the duty of the comedian to see the boundary and take a running leap right over it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I know that I'm paraphrasing him, but Ricky Gervais has always said this. I believe Jimmy Carr has said the same. You know, there's nothing off limits for a joke. You know, both of those guys, particularly Jimmy Carr, kind of test that to the limit. But why not? What the hell, eh?
I think it's if I've always found that if I've done a club, I've done a set and somebody's been offended, it might be one or two people, but there's 200 people in there. So sorry, I can't really. You know what I mean? It's not. And if you're offended, then you're an adult. Be offended.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a comedian. You are. I mean, my feeling is I was a comic, a stand-up. A lot of people say I am very funny, but not in a good way. But
you are funny.
Seriously, if I was a stand-up, my MO, if you like, I wouldn't go out of my way to try and think of things that are near the knuckle and offensive. But if I came up with something, but if I thought of something that's funny that I knew might be offensive to some people, but I thought was funny, I'd give it a whirl.
If you were afraid to just, you know, of offending somebody, then it's not the job for you. Because it's everyday life. You might, you know, I'm offended by the X Factor, but I don't ring the police.
Yeah.
You know, it offends me. Yeah, it does. It's a valid offence, isn't it? It does.
Well, I was a TV critic for 10 years. I had to watch the X Factor every single week. I never thought of that. In retrospect, I should have called the police. It was bad. It was bad for my mental health. It really was.
Like a lot of comedians, I came from a music background, and it does. It actually offends me, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I just don't watch it.
Yeah, I just think I'll tell you what this discussion plays into, Dave. It's the way that we as a society in Britain, modern Western world, if you like, are becoming, in my view, more and more puritanical. Oh, you can't say that, you can't do that. That might offend someone. Well, even if you told me that will offend someone, frankly, I don't really care. If I offend someone and make someone else laugh, hey ho, happy days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't sort of, you wouldn't. How could you sort of go through life like that, worrying about that?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, as I say, respect to Rosie Jones, but I think she's on the wrong track here, issuing rules and regulations about what you can and cannot tell jokes about. And the idea that you, Dave, as a comedian, can't. This is what she's saying. Unless you've experienced it, you can't tell a joke about it. That is nonsense, isn't it?
Well, if it's about the trans issue, then I've experienced being a man, so I do. You know, I'm not going to like go on thing, but I say about the LGBT thing in my set, and I say that I thought it was a sandwich. You know,
well, I used to be a man, but I'm now non-binary, of course.
Well, another thing is, I mean, in terms of the sort of trans thing, I mean, what do they expect? I mean, they're not. They're very
look, my view on making Ricky Gervais is big on this. My view on making jokes about the trans issue, I wouldn't go out of my way to do it, but the fact that they're so sensitive about it is what makes it kind of funny, isn't it?
Well, he's my favourite. He's my favourite.
He's great. Yeah, he's great. I know him vaguely, and you know, he's a very, very intelligent guy. I think most good comedians need to be super sharp, and he is.
And again, you know, he's a nice person.
Yeah, he is. You're right. He's a good guy.
He's a joke.
Animal lover. Which is why I know him, Dave. We are both patrons of the same charity, the same animal charity.
You find that they are good people, you know, and it's a joke. You're not supposed to take it seriously.
Exactly. That is true, Dave. Dave, good to talk to you, mate. Thanks for calling. Dave in Manchester. Another Manchester call. Let's quickly take that. And again, about jokes. And this is Paul. Hi, Paul. Jokes. Any topics that you think should be off limits, out of bounds for comedy?
Oh, good evening, Kevin. What it is, we live in a PC world today, as you know.
Exactly.
But if you look at the 90s, Chubby Brown and Bernard Manning in his Embassy Club, even the comedic shows of the 60s and 70s, you weren't allowed to say certain things, and that's what I think. I used to go to the Frog and Bucket in Manchester to stand-ups there, And they used to say some nasty
The Frog and
things.
Bucket. Yeah, okay. Let's get that name right, yeah. No, exactly. I mean, I knew Bernard Manning a bit because I interviewed him a few times. And although his material was controversial, to say the least, I'll tell you what he had. He had the most immaculate comic timing that you'll ever come across. And if you ever saw him before a live audience, he just had them in the palm of his hand. Fantastic performer. And of course, the Po Face crew all came down and said, "You're a racist, this is awful, it's terrible material." Maybe you think that, but he made people roar with laughter, which I would contend, Paul, is the job of a comedian, right?
Of course it is, of course. If you're offended, if you find it offensive and you're offended, don't go. Don't go, don't pay your money to go and watch a comedian.
Exactly.
Why would you?
Yeah.
Oh God.
I know where you're coming from, Paul. You share my frustration about this.
The Greeks invented satire thousands of years ago, and it's satirical plays, and everyone loved them. But today it's just unbelievable.
Exactly right.
Really, isn't it?
Exactly right, Paul. I'm with you all the way. Nothing should be off limits. Good call. Thank you very much for ringing, Paul in Manchester. Let's go to break. When I come back, I'm going to read a competition for you, and we've got lots more calls. We'll talk about something slightly more serious, although I think it's fascinating. What can you and can you not tell jokes about, in my view? Nothing you can't tell a joke about, but some people may disagree. I think it's an interesting topic. But we'll get on to, we've got one more call about jokes, and then we'll talk about that joke of a Chief Constable, Craig Guilford, the West Midlands top cop, who needs to go as a matter of some urgency because he's a low-life little liar. Let's go to break. Competition time next, and more of your calls, more of your messages, and I got a WhatsApp voice note to play as well. So much still to come. Stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Take some calls in just a minute. But first, time now to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning a trip of a lifetime to San Francisco. Talk is giving away flights, a 3-night stay at a 4-star Intercontinental Hotel, and £2,500 spending money, plus tickets to the Super Bowl to top it all off. Listen to find out how you can enter.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 22nd January 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at TalkSport.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
You don't want to miss out on a trip of a lifetime, so good luck. That's my line, by the way. Let's go to... we've got a WhatsApp voice note. Shall we play that first? This is Michael on the Birmingham or the West Midlands Police Chief.
Hiya, Kev. Just about this police chief, I've never cringed so hard in my life listening to one person speak. What a little sycophant. Little terrified, cowardly sycophant. He needs to get a grip of his life, not just his job. He's out of there. He's got to be out of there.
Michael, yeah, you're beginning to sum up the way I feel about it. I feel sort of like he makes my flesh crawl, that guy, and I think that's what you're vocalising there. I mean, you know, just a little creep and a liar. Get out, go away. Don't be a police chief anymore. You shame the uniform. Seriously, Guildford, get out of here. Go, in the name of God, just go. Let's talk to Graham in Wolverhampton. Let's take a last call on jokes. Graham, you believe that every joke is offensive to someone. Let's hope so, eh?
Well, you're all right, Kev. This is the first time I've ever...
Oh, you're a first-time caller, as we like to say in the business. I love first-time callers. Thank you for ringing, Graham. Welcome.
Ah, no problem, mate. Happy New Year to you, mate.
And to you, and to you. Jokes.
When you think about it, Kev, every joke, when you bring it down to the bare bones, it's going to be offensive to somebody because that offence will make people laugh.
Yeah. Well, I think one of our other callers, I think it was David Masters, was saying that, or was it Paul Cox, my guest? He said that Billy Connolly said that if you don't offend someone, it's unlikely to be a funny joke.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, even with the slightly racist jokes where you're talking about the Irish or Scottish or the Welsh.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't take offence at it.
But I mean, that's what people were saying not so long ago.
It's a Scottish joke.
Yeah.
I don't think it's hilarious.
Well, I remember a couple of years back watching some discussion on telly, and somebody said, "I'm afraid that the era of the Irishman, Scotsman, and English jokes are over. Can't say those anymore because that's racist."
No.
Yeah, I tell you why they don't like it is because obviously those jokes stereotype the characteristics that we tend to bestow on English people, on Scottish people and Irish people, and always the payoff is the stupid Irish person. I can say this because I am, of course, Irish by descent. And also I'm stupid, so there you go.
Kevin, no, you're not. No, you're not.
No.
Can I just leave you with one thing?
Yeah, go on, mate.
Have you heard about the Irish sheepdog, the English sheepdog trials?
Is this going to be an okay joke for a family show? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay then. It better be. It better be. Go on then. Say that again. Have I heard?
The English sheepdog trials in Ireland.
Yeah. Go on.
They was all found guilty. There you go. I mean, nothing offensive.
I do actually find that funny. Good joke, Graham, and thank you very much for an excellent first call. Don't make it your last call. Call again. Good to talk. Graham in Wolverhampton. Right, let's get on to some more serious topics, perhaps. This is from read a couple of texts first before we go back to the phones. This is Amanda in London. She says, "It is now apparent to whom Craig Guildford shows his loyalty. He is a complete disgrace to our country." Yeah, he's been at the beck and call of the Muslim community. I think coppers should think about the Muslim community. They should also think about the Jewish community. This guy, Guildford, it seems to be that he's just going, "Hello, Muslims, what do you want me to do? Hello, Islamist extremists. What would you like? What decision would you like? Oh, OK, I'll do that." One-tier policing. He is the epitome. He's about 5-tier policing, that guy. And Dan from Kent says Mike Neville should be the head of police now. Utter common sense. Always said this. Oh, by the way, Ali from Sidcup, he's not a relative of mine. He sent this in last night. He sent it again. You know, I don't like to boast, but Ali says Kev is the best presenter on Talk. Who am I to disagree? Right, Big Ed. Let's go to Mark in Lincolnshire and talk about Craig Guildford. Hello, Mark.
Hi there, Kev. You all right?
Yeah. Craig Guildford, I think you would agree he needs to step down. He needs to be fired. But I think he's a disgrace. He's a disgrace to the uniform, isn't he?
Absolutely, Kev. You know, it's an absolute joke at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, I was just kind of like thinking about this guy and his actions and everything.
Yeah.
And he's obviously not fazed by, you know, the Home Secretary removing her confidence in him. I'm just wondering if it was the Muslim community leaders of Afton removing their confidence in him, I think we might see a different result. He may well step down. He may have stepped down within minutes.
Yeah.
If that happened.
Well, it strikes me as the kind of guy, Mark, who would just cling on to his job come hell or high water. And in terms of still sticking there, and apparently we're hearing he's digging in his heels, he's demanding due process. I mean, talk about not reading the room.
Yeah, I mean, well, what do you expect? I mean, he strikes me as somebody that's obviously quite ideologically driven. He doesn't want to accept the fact that he was wrong about something. Yes, he might make some, comments about, we made some bad decisions here and, we were misled by this information and all the rest of it. But it doesn't change the reality. He clearly doesn't want to admit that he was wrong about something. Otherwise, surely he would see sense, wouldn't he, at the end of the day, and say, well, look, I've really screwed this up. I've got to step down. I mean, especially if I say, the Home Secretary removes confidence in you. That's kind of like.
I'll tell you what, Mark.
How can you operate?
I think Mike Neville and I were agreeing. I mean, I can't take this entirely to the bank, but I'm pretty certain that is unprecedented. I certainly have never heard a Home Secretary declare no confidence in a major police chief of a major police force. I mean, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I would say for at least 20 years. I'm not sure exactly when the last time that happened, but
I can't remember it ever happening. I can't remember it ever happening.
I don't have much memory of it either, to be honest. I mean,
it's certainly extraordinary, Mark. It's extraordinary, and Shabana Mahmood did not do that lightly. I think she was definitely trying to change the dial on this and try to get Guildford to do the decent thing and step down. Because she ludicrously, they've got to change this, as the Home Secretary in charge of all police forces, she can't sack him. That has to be the Police and Crime Commissioner. And that's got to change. That's got to change. Yeah. The Home Secretary should be able to, in extraordinary circumstances, sack a police chief. That has to change. And to be fair to Ms. Mahmood, if she had the power, it looks like she would have done that today.
I think she has to. I mean, I know she's changing. They're looking at changing the legislation, aren't they?
Well, she wants to change that, and they're getting rid of. Police and crime commissioners are going to cease to exist, and not a moment too soon. They're a waste of space.
Absolutely. I mean, that's pretty much all I've got to say on it.
No.
The only thing I wanted to say to you, Kev, before I go, just to remind you, we spoke about this before Christmas. Just wanted to remind you yet again, West Auckland Town FC were the first club to ever win the World Cup.
Oh, God. No, you told me that before. Fulham, my team, are one of the many clubs never to have won the FA Cup or indeed anything else at all. There's a lot of cobwebs at Craven Cottage. Most of them are in the trophy cabinet, which is completely empty. Mark, good to talk to you as always. I'll tell you what we got here. Yeah, Davey from Edinburgh, stick around where you are. We'll talk to you after these messages. Stay where you are, folks.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Go back to the phones in just a second. A couple of messages. Chris writes about Craig Guilford. If this was a young copper, he would have been sacked by now. And I think Chris is exactly right. Mike Neville made that point. If he was a police constable or a sergeant, he'd be gone. But because he's a chief constable, he's still there. Disgraceful. Tracy says, hi Kev, this flip-flop regarding the ID cards, I'm starting to believe that when Labour want to change the narrative of what is on the front pages, they throw a story out there that the media will run with. Then they U-turn. I do believe it was the embarrassment of his best mate Mandelson. Just a thought. Tracy, the dead cat syndrome, they call it. Create a new story and you know, get rid of unflattering negative stories about you. Politicians and political parties and prime ministers do it all the time. I don't think ID cards was a dead cat. It was a genuine bid to shackle us with a Soviet-style papers, please system, but it didn't work. What a damn shame. Let's go, as I promised, to Davey in Edinburgh. Hello, Davey.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. What would you like to say?
Well, this lying, cheating, charlatan chief constable, I'm just thinking that there's a possibility, and it'll probably happen, that the lawyers will be looking at this. And you could have every case that he's ever been involved with.
Yeah, that, you know what?
Being re-examined, and it could cost millions of pounds in compensation.
Very, very good point, David. I heard somebody else allude to exactly what you're saying. This guy, Craig Guilford, has proved himself over the past couple of weeks to be a liar. And therefore, any case that he has presided over could be legally dicey. It's a really good point you're making. You know, if you had, you know, I don't know, been nicked and were doing 5 years for some kind of crime that he was involved in prosecuting you for, you could go back and say, wait a second, you know, he said this, but he's not famous for telling the truth, is he? Yeah, good point. Yeah, Davey, I think that's a great point, worth thinking about. Thanks for a good call. Call me again. David in Edinburgh. It's a good point, isn't it? Let's go to, of course, we can't go through a show without talking to Georgina, can we? And here she is. Hello, Georgina.
Good evening, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good. You want to talk about Mr. Guilford as well? He's a disgrace, isn't he?
He is an absolute disgrace. I mean, this is more than Craig Guilford's fear of Islamic reprisal against the Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters or his incompetence. It also looks terribly like a case of anti-Semitism. I mean, the police are supposed to serve without fear or favour, but sadly in this case, Kevin, it was our Jewish community that were having to live in fear. And it was the Islamic radicals or the political bodies who, in this case, were being given the favours. This police chief has definitely been compromised as far as I'm concerned.
Compromised? You could say that again. I mean, this is what he did, Georgina. What it's very clear that he did. He didn't once think about the rights of the Jewish football fans or the local Jewish community. The only thing he thought about was, what do the Muslims want? Now, obviously, Birmingham, Perry Bar, Roundabout Villas, a very Islamic community. Nothing wrong with that. All he did is say, what do you want? And let's face it, some of the people he spoke to, we know this, they weren't normal Muslims, they were Islamists, they were extremists. One of the people he took advice for thinks that husbands should be able to beat their wives up to discipline them, you know, thinks that homosexuality should be illegal, and that wives should never be allowed out of the house unless they get their husband's permission. This is one of the local Muslims. He was a preacher in a local mosque, Green Lane Mosque, who Craig Dunlop, stop calling him Dunlop, Craig Guilford, I don't know why I keep doing this. Who is Craig Dunlop? Craig Guilford, he took advice from a guy like that. What's that about?
Well, I think it's a classic case of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Craig Guilford has been caught out bang to rights in his lies, and this is gross misconduct as far as I'm concerned. I can't believe that he's digging himself into the position like an Alabama tick. I can't believe he hasn't already resigned, this guy. If this chief constable does not resign, then it goes to show that he has not an ounce of self-respect or moral fibre, especially when the Home Secretary...
No integrity, no integrity, no integrity.
The Home Secretary's already declared a vote of no confidence against the man. You can't defend the undefendable, Kevin, and this is what Craig Guildford is.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Georgina, I'll tell you what really annoys me about this entire situation. There's so many things annoying me about it, but this is a classic example of modern Britain in which accountability seems to be a thing of the past. Nobody takes the blame. No accountability. This guy should face accountability for his lies, for his behaviour, for his deceptive behaviour over the last couple of months. He should be accountable. He should take the blame. And if he won't resign, he should be fired maybe tonight, if not for early tomorrow morning. How's that?
Well, I feel exactly the same. He had the opportunity to resign, and show that he had a bit of moral fibre. He hasn't done it. So the only thing for him now is for him to get sacked. How can our Jewish community ever feel safe when we have people in such high positions, Kevin, that are compromised against our Jewish community? This is no way for any community to live. And it's also a horrible example that Craig Guildford is setting to the rest of our police force. Now, my son is a high-ranking police officer, one of my eldest sons, and he is absolutely disgusted with what's going on. I bet you he is. That's really interesting to hear, Georgina, because, of course, we had Mike Neville, former copper, former Met Police detective, in the studio earlier. He, too, absolutely disgusted by this guy. So decent coppers everywhere. Well, they're all painted by association, Kevin, now.
He shames the uniform. He shames the uniform. And in terms of confidence and trust in British policing, he needs to go if there is to be any restoration of trust in the cops. Simple as that. Georgina, always great to talk to you. Thank you very much for another excellent call. Let's go to Mark in Glasgow. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Kevin. Hi. Listening to what's been going on over the last few days about this chief constable, I think, bearing in mind the area he's located in, the council's mostly Muslim. The local MP, Ayub Khan, I think, is the one who started.
Ayub Khan. He stood up in Parliament today in the Commons and said that Craig Guildford is being subjected to a witch hunt. No, he isn't.
You're right. But the other thing that's going on is Ayub Khan is the local MP, and
Perry Barr.
Neither local Ayub Khan nor those two other guys who put out the video before the game online. I'm sorry, why aren't they being prosecuted for racism and anti-Semitism? Because clearly that was incitement, and I think your poor chief constable is damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. He's got a Labour Party who seem to be pandering to the Muslims. He's got a local MP and Islamicists who seem to be running the show over there. What's he supposed to do? My guess right now is he is negotiating his payoff to get the hell out of there and cause any lesser...
he wants to go. I'll tell you what he actually wanted. I think even he might accept he won't get this now. There's this weird system where police chiefs, long-serving police chiefs, they retire and they get their full pension, and the next day they are contracted to continue their job. It's a kind of corrupt system that seems to be going on in the police force. He was hoping for that. He's not going to get that, but he should go. He should go fast. I totally agree with you. Mark, good call. Mark in Glasgow there. Last call. In a minute, by the way, I should have said earlier, Petri Hoskin will be in the studio to take over the helm of the Good Ship Talk. She'll take you through from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. into the small hours. So much still to come right here on Talk. First, though, let's talk to Michael in Birmingham, where it's all happening. Michael, what is your view on Craig Guildford?
Well, Guildford, Dunlop, whatever we want to call him.
Don't get me started on. I don't know why I keep saying that, but
I mean, look, my take on this is, I mean, obviously he should go, and your caller from Glasgow was on the money. But he didn't mention a couple of other things.
Yeah.
Ms Mahmood isn't just the Home Secretary, she's also an MP here in Birmingham, and her constituency probably covers the headquarters of West Midlands Police, for what it's worth. And my local MP for my sins, my local MP for my sins is Jess Phillips, who won by about 300 votes.
She's got a very Muslim constituency as well, hasn't she?
Well, I know, I live in it, and she hasn't said a dicky bird about it. And by the way,
that's a good point. That is a good point.
There's legislation which the Tory Shadow Home Secretary quoted today to say that Mahmood can actually fire the Chief Constable. She can instruct the Police Commissioner to do it. But
wait a second though. That doesn't mean she's firing him, does it?
She can instruct them to do it.
Well, yeah, but I don't believe that is the case, Michael, because...
that was what he said.
Okay.
But my point is that even if she hasn't got the direct power, look at what they're trying to do with Twitter. They're trying to lean on Ofcom to within days ban Twitter. Why can't they lean on that on that police commissioner to within 5 working days get rid of him? Because they're talking a good game, but they're doing nothing. And in Jess Phillips' case, she's saying nothing.
Yeah, so many of them are saying nothing. Shabana Mahmood, to her credit, really put the cat among the pigeons today when she said, I have no confidence in this guy. That is extraordinary. And that puts intense pressure on him. If he had dignity, integrity, an ounce of either of those facets, then he would resign now. But I agree with you, Michael. I think that this police and crime commissioner who's sort of hiding about due process and we'll have a meeting on the 27th of January. I think he should just turn around and say, sod due process. Craig Guilford is hereby sacked. Sue me. Seriously, get rid of the guy. I really do think he's a disgrace. He's a disgrace to the uniform, and he